My name is William Maitland. I was married, mostly happily, for 18 years, to a beautiful woman who I had long realized was out of my league. Nearly 5 months ago, my world turned upside down when she asked me to leave our home to make space for her new, younger professor boyfriend. After filing for divorce, she constantly engaged me in exhausting conversations that led nowhere. Now, as I work on rebuilding my life and career, I face a challenging, high-profile case. But my mind is still clouded by the emotional weight of my personal life falling apart. Once you realize that your efforts to make your wife happy are not working and she stays distant, there isn't much more to say. Today, I am a free man. I still live in my small condo near the courthouse and the state attorney's office, where I work as the second in command. I haven't found anyone to fill the space my wife left in my life. However, I have repaired my relationship with my 18-year-old daughter and 14-year-old son, and I am focused on my job. I am preparing to prosecute a case that could see a harmful woman receive strict consequences. I walked into the courtroom with Jessica Stevens beside me. Judge Leonard Pizarro acknowledged me with a nod. At 70, he was the oldest active judge, known for being strict, but he was fair in his decisions. Judy Johansson was already at the defendant's table with her lawyer. I greeted Lou Walters, who stood and came over to Jessica and me. He offered his hand, and I shook it. I would say, may the best man win, but that would be too bold, Lou said with a smile. So instead, I'll wish for justice to win, which means my client will be found innocent. You really think she's innocent? He looked around to make sure only Jessica could hear, then said, honestly, my job is to defend her, and that's what matters. With me on her side and looking at your case, it's likely she'll be cleared. I couldn't help but smile. Aren't you worried that justice might still catch up with her? Come on, Bill. We both know how this will end. You're the experienced one, and I'm the newcomer. I'll win this case and get my chance in the spotlight. Maybe it's time for you to think about quieter legal work, like corporate law or estate planning. His tone was friendly, and we had joked like this before. However, I was determined to win this case, and putting him in his place would be a nice bonus. He was talented, but everyone could use a bit of humility. Let's see who wins this time, young Luke, I replied, continuing our friendly exchange. He laughed, saying, the retirement home for wise ones has a room ready for you, master. As always, your humility is your greatest asset. He chuckled and returned to his client. Judy Johansson was 67 but looked much younger. About 5'4" tall, she had an attractive figure for her age and was dressed modestly in a pink blouse and a long dress that reached her ankles, showing very little skin, with the blouse gently fitting to hint at her shape without revealing too much. Lou knew what was coming and didn't want the jury to see his client in a negative light. The case began to unfold, and we presented the main points to the jury outlining the facts. Judy Johansson had been married 3 times before she met Clark Carroll in 2000. She was not poor, but she wasn't very rich either. Carroll was a 78-year-old man who had built a successful chain of grocery stores in the Midwest. He had about $50 million. They met at a dance in a retirement community where Carroll moved after his wife of 50 years passed away the year before. Their relationship grew fast. They were living together within a month and married within 2. Soon after, Carroll changed his will to give most of his estate to Judy, leaving his 2 grown children around $10 million each. This meant Judy would inherit about $30 million. Clark Carroll had several health problems, but an enlarged heart was what eventually caused his death a year ago in their home in Orlando, where they had moved after their marriage. I told the jury that we would show through expert testimony that Carroll received too much heart medication, which led to his passing. I assured the jury we would prove that Judy was the only person who could have given him that extra dose. She had access to the medication, financial reasons that could motivate her, and most importantly, she had a deep emotional reason linked to a relationship she had pursued before marrying Clark. Lou, my colleague, stayed calm during our presentation, saving his full approach for the trial. He gave a brief opening statement saying that Judy had been unfairly judged and that any mistake in giving her husband his medication was not intended. He argued firmly that the prosecution would have a hard time proving that Judy meant to harm her husband. Our first witnesses, mostly from Orlando, where the media attention was high, helped set the stage. Dr. Eugenio Amparo, Carol's personal doctor, testified that while the enlarged heart was serious, the medications he was on were what really caused the complications. Judy had been the only person in the house when Clark took his medicine, and she admitted that she had given it to him. Then it was Lou's turn. He got Dr. Amparo to agree that Carol was very ill, and that those caring for him were dealing with many different medications, any one of which could be risky. But as long as Mrs. Carol followed the instructions I gave her, there is no reason she should have made such a big mistake, Amparo said with a strong Filipino accent. But you are the expert, Dr. Amparo. My client is not a professional. Is it possible that, in a moment of stress or strong feelings, she might have made a mistake? It is possible, but she had been taking care of her husband for almost 5 years. It would be unusual for her to get confused after all that time. Lou looked at him sharply, then turned back to me, signaling that he was ready to challenge Amparo and, by extension, me. How long have you been a doctor, Dr. Amparo? 24 years. And you worked in the Philippines for 10 years before coming here? Yes. Do you remember a patient named Bayani Amakai? Amparo's face changed, and he looked uncomfortable. Wasn't he one of your patients? You had been practicing for nearly 8 years when he became your patient, and he had similar health problems. Didn't a mistake about his medications lead to his bad outcome? That was during a time of political unrest and a typhoon nearby, and the hospital was very crowded. There was a lot of confusion. But you approved the medication, didn't you, doctor? You, a professional with many years of training and experience, made a big mistake like Mrs. Johansson. Were there any consequences for you? No. Did you lose your license? No. What happened then? There was an out-of-court settlement. The family agreed to it. So you settled with them and faced no consequences. I wouldn't say it like that. I would, doctor. You should know better than anyone in this room how fragile Mr. Carroll's health was and how easy it is to make a serious mistake. Yet you were judging an elderly woman, a non-professional, and suggesting there was something wrong with her mistake. Would you like to change what you said? Lou looked at him until Amparo finally met his gaze. He wouldn't look at me. Yes, Mr. Carroll was not in good health, and it is possible that someone without medical training could make a mistake without meaning to. Sometimes we doctors forget that not everyone has our training. No more questions. Lou gave me a look that said a lot and went back to his table. He was about to see that the old story wasn't going to end quietly. Your Honor, I have more questions. Lou thought he had won the argument. I was ready to change that. Dr. Amparo, Mr. Walters mentioned a patient of yours who died due to a medication mistake. You admitted that mistake. Was that error only your fault and not due to a nurse or someone below you? No, sir, it was my responsibility. I made the mistake. That's honest of you. You mentioned political unrest, a storm, and overcrowding as factors in your mistake. Could you please explain to the jury about the political problems? He looked down at his hands. After a few moments, the judge seemed restless, so I stepped closer to the witness stand and said gently, I know what happened, Dr. Amparo. Would it help if I shared the details and you just confirm them? I glanced at Lou, who hesitated to object, knowing this was a sensitive topic. Dr. Amparo, over 15 years ago, there was serious political unrest in the Philippine province where you and your family lived, correct? The day before, a strong storm had hit the area. Entire villages were destroyed, and the hospital where you worked was overwhelmed with patients. Isn't that true? Yes. You had worked for 36 hours without a break before the medication mistake, hadn't you? Yes. And 2 hours before your mistake with Mr. Amake, you received a troubling radio message from the Philippine security forces, didn't you? He nodded, tears starting to form in his eyes. They told you that your wife and son were involved in a serious situation while helping in a nearby village, didn't they? The news was alarming. He stayed quiet, clearly shaken. They sent this message because you were not only a doctor but also an elected official in your province. They were warning all government leaders. He remained still, his head down. And when you got that news, Dr. Amparo, Did you feel overwhelmed? Did you pull away from everything? Or perhaps turn to the substances you had access to? It would have been so easy. Your whole world changed that afternoon. The silence went on, making it feel like time had stopped. I couldn't even tell if the jurors were breathing. I looked at Pizarro, who also seemed shocked. Finally, Amparo lifted his head, his face wet with tears. No, I did my job. There were people who needed help. I couldn't leave them. I simply pushed my feelings away for a while. I could grieve later. I looked at Lou, and even without words, I carried a clear message. Now that I've put you in a tough spot, let's see how you recover. I turned back to Amparo. Doctor, clearly there was a good reason for your difficulty in focusing. To your knowledge, on the day Mrs. Carroll mistakenly gave her husband the wrong medication, was there any troubling incident involving her family? Was she responsible for saving many lives? Was she under any kind of stress like what you went through? I looked back at Lou, challenging him to say something. Amparo just shook his head. No more questions, Your Honor. Pizarro glanced at Lou, and I thought I spotted some sympathy in the judge's expression. Any more questions for this witness, Mr. Walters? He just stood at his desk, looking down at Judy Johansson, then at Amparo. I don't normally try to guess what people are thinking, but I could see he wasn't going to challenge Amparo's testimony. He seemed to realize it would only make him look cold. No, Your Honor. We moved on to more police officers, ambulance staff, and others we needed to hear from. Lou was working on intuition now. I had surprised him, but I knew he would come back stronger. When noon arrived, Pizarro said, "This is a good time to stop. Let's meet again at 1:30. Is that good for you, gentlemen?" I nodded and looked at Lou. He nodded too. Then everyone started to leave. Judy was released on bond, and with her grown son beside her, they headed off for lunch. When only a few people were left, Lou came over to talk. Are you sure you didn't make a deal with someone, Bill? How did you pull that off? Is that you, Lou? You really caught me by surprise there. He playfully tapped the side of my face and said, You're not going to let me forget my mistake, are you? Why'd you let me get into that? You could have shared all that info without making me look silly. But it was so much fun making you look silly. He rubbed his chin. All right, I deserved that. Remind me not to poke the bear in the future, but when everything is done, I'm going to win. You just don't have enough to convict her. They won't send a grandmother to prison, not here, not with the evidence you have. I stood up, not able to hide a small smile. We'll just have to wait and see, won't we, young Luke? Anyway, want to grab lunch somewhere? Treat me, and I might go easy on you during the trial. He smiled back. You know, I should try to get you and Debbie back together. You weren't so sharp when you two were spending time together. I felt my mood drop, and he tapped me on the side of the face again, a bit firmer this time. Come on, man, you're divorced. She's out of your life. You've got to be able to laugh about it someday. I'm your friend, probably the best one you've got. If I can't tease you about her, you'll be stuck feeling sad for a long time. Just move on, okay? Monday, August 22nd, 2005, 10 a.m. Even though she was new at her job, she had heard enough from her coworkers during her interviews to know that many of the attorneys and staff who didn't have to be there would be down in Judge Pizarro's chambers for the big trial between Bill Maitland and Lou Walters. Want to come with me? The public defender Dennis Leary asked, peeking into her office. If you have questions about the trial, I can explain it as we go. You all want to go just to watch a trial? Isn't that what you do every day? He smiled, and while she would have felt butterflies in her stomach from it, she suddenly felt sick. She turned away for a moment. She had already planned to see her doctor. Ever since the weekend, she had been feeling nauseous and had even thrown up several times. The first thing she did was buy a pregnancy test, just to be sure. There was no way she could be pregnant since she had been taking birth control for years. But the test said she was not expecting. Still, the nausea wouldn't go away. She had tried Tums and other over-the-counter remedies. It had been years since she felt this sick, and that was when she was pregnant. But she was sure she wasn't. So what was going on? She turned her attention back to Leary. She knew about his reputation and felt drawn to his personality, but he seemed like a good guy. Plus, she was curious to see Bill in action and to watch Lou unfold his arguments. It was amusing. She realized she hadn't seen Bill practice law in years, not since he joined the state attorney's office. She had heard about his work during their late-night chats and had a sense of how others in his world viewed him. But now, she had the chance to see it for herself. Now that they were finally apart, just two people who once shared a life, she was interested to see him in a new light, to understand him as others did. It's like watching the Super Bowl. This trial has captured a lot of attention. We get to see Lou Walters, known as the Shark, take on the Angel of Death. They could probably sell tickets to this. It was hard for her to picture people paying to see Bill in any professional setting, but she realized he had a life she hadn't fully appreciated before. She took the elevator down to the courtroom with Leary, and they found seats on the left side of the public area. The section was 4 rows deep, and many seats on both sides were filled. There were secretaries and lawyers from both the state attorney's office and the public defender's office, as well as a significant number of local, state, and even national reporters. The story about the killer granny had already made headlines on TV news. Two people seemed to be saving their seats and left as she and Leary sat down. Leary leaned closer and said, "This is just the beginning. It's like the start of a boxing match where they are just getting a feel for each other. But something interesting will happen." As they listened to the two lawyers, Debbie thought about her meeting with Lou. He was still tall and attractive, moving with ease. She noticed the women in the audience, secretaries, lawyers, and others watching him closely. Mona did not realize how many women might be interested in Lou if he was open to dating. Debbie remembered her past feelings for him. Would she have pursued a relationship if he had shown interest? She would never know. But now she felt relieved she didn't have to find out. Back then, she was upset with Bill, and the idea of someone like Lou was tempting. Now, watching the two men in the courtroom, she suddenly felt guilty. She had hurt Bill's pride and self-esteem. She knew this was true. Even if she had decided to leave him, she wished she could have done it differently. A woman leaving a man couldn't be easy for his self-worth. Imagining Bill's feelings was hard since she had never been left by anyone. But being with Doug during the UNF event had to have affected Bill's confidence. Bill didn't have many friends. Though people respected him, he wasn't one to go out. He rarely socialized at bars or sports events. He spent most of his time working or at home watching TV with his family. It struck her as odd that she could see this now when she couldn't before. Bill had worked too much, but when he had free time, it was with her or the kids. He might have seemed boring, but he always came home. His only real friend was Lou Walters. Lou was the only one he had ever gone out with, the only one he had attended a Jaguars game with. The thought of taking Lou away from him made her feel sick again, like a bad case of heartburn. How could I have felt okay if I had taken away the one good friend he really had? She focused on Bill, who was wearing black and looking confident under the lights, moving gracefully. Maybe that was what boxing looked like. Looking around the audience, she noticed that just as many women were watching him as those watching Lou. She shook her head, remembering the first time she saw him at the gym, looking different. This was the first time she saw him in his element. She now realized that the parties she had gone to felt like a completely different world. He had never been very social, so she had often seen him looking uncomfortable. She briefly wished she could have seen him in a different light. Debbie watched as Dr. Amparo was questioned by Lou and felt sorry for Bill. She wasn't a lawyer, but she could see how harsh Lou's comments were towards Dr. Amparo. Even if he had made mistakes, she understood how skilled Lou was in the courtroom. Minutes later, when Bill turned the situation on its head, Leary smiled and had to hold back laughter. "Is this as bad for Lou as I think it is?" Debbie asked. "Oh, yes," Leary replied. "Bill managed to catch him off guard. He must have known Lou would go after Amparo and find a mistake that could impact the case. But Lou got a bit lazy. He didn't look deeper. If he had, he could have explained the situation better and softened how people viewed Amparo." "Now," Leary continued, "they're starting to think Granny really didn't have a good reason for her actions, and they definitely don't see Lou in a positive light. Bill really managed to turn things around. And Lou just fell into that." Leary smiled at her. "Walters always believes he's the smartest person in the room. He is clever and talented, which is why he has climbed the ranks so fast. But that's also where he is vulnerable. If you think you're the smartest one around, You might overlook someone who is either wiser or works harder than you. She watched the two men as they engaged for the rest of the morning. She thought about her own assumptions, having looked at the tall, confident Lou Walters and naturally believing he would outshine Bill. Bill, shorter and more ordinary, appeared to be the underdog, just as he had stood out for doing so well at the awards ceremony. As she walked toward the elevators, 3 women in front of her were chatting. "That Lou Walters could call me any night. It's too bad they say he's married and doesn't get involved with anyone else. He is attractive, but Maitland seems so distant." "I know. They used to call him the Iceman when he was with his wife. They say she left him for someone younger and less successful. Yeah, he has a good job. He runs the office and... Did you see him during that presentation? He's almost scary." "But scary in a good way. What do you think he'd be like if someone could warm him up?" "I think he'd be pretty intense." "Sounds like you like intense people." One of them nudged another, and they quickly glanced back at Debbie and Leary. "Oh no," one said, and they rushed away. Leary shook his head at her. "Get used to it, boss. Courthouses feel a lot like small towns. Everyone seems to know each other or find ways to connect. Now that he is single, everyone will notice. Besides, you turned him down." Monday, August 22nd, 2005, 1:15 p.m. "You knew she was in the crowd watching you, didn't you?" "When?" As we walked into Pizarro's courtroom, many important people were already getting ready. I saw a blonde woman with long hair watching me and Lou. I recognized her from a news team. "Debbie was here?" "Yes, she was. I think she has some interest in me, but it seemed like she was really looking at you. She seemed interested." "That's not true, Lou. I know you're trying to make this lighter, but I don't think she cares about me. You might be right about yourself." "You're missing the point, my friend. I told her that day in Lander's office that you two should be examples of marital struggles. Do you realize she probably never saw you being yourself? To her, you were just the supporting partner, and that's not the real you." "Okay, she came here. Many people come to watch trials like this, but she's probably just waiting for me to mess up. She is not attracted to my middle-aged self. I agree it would take something unusual for her to notice an older man, but haven't you seen women looking at you during this trial? No one can be that unaware." I sat down at the prosecutor's table and gestured for him to take his seat. "I appreciate the boost to my confidence, Lou, but I'm not you. Women don't see me that way." He just shook his head and said softly, almost under his breath, as Jessica Stevens walked up to me, "I care about you, man, but sometimes I wonder how you can be so unaware." Jessica's eyes grew wide at his words, but she remained quiet. As things started again, I tried to discreetly watch the audience. Lou caught my eye a few times and shook his head. She hadn't come back. Not that it mattered. I scolded myself internally. In some ways, Lou was right. I was so out of touch with women that perhaps I shouldn't pass on my traits to future generations. I didn't mind that she had been at the trial, but it still bothered me that she hadn't returned. How could I explain this? I certainly couldn't. We continued our back and forth, and Lou was careful not to fall into any more traps. We were getting ready to dive into the main part of the trial, looking at each other like opponents preparing for a big match. It was going to get intense soon. I had just stood up after Pizarro asked for my next witness when the clock neared 3 p.m. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Sergeant Heather McDonald from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as our next witness. I expect her testimony will take some time and is important for the state's case. May we adjourn for the day?" When the judge agreed, Lou came over and we talked for a bit. Megan Whitcomb, an attorney who used to be one of our assistant state attorneys 5 years ago, came over to talk to us. She was about 5 feet 4 inches tall with light brown hair. While she might not have stood out in a crowd, she had a nice presence and was very smart. She smiled at me, then at Lou, and said, "Are you having any trouble moving around, Lou?" He just smiled back. "Round 1 goes to the Angel of Death, Megan, but this is a long match. I'll keep going and win in the end." She smiled brightly. It was clear why people liked her. "I could tell you had him worried today, Lou. Everyone was saying how well you did," she said, laughing. Lou grinned and pretended to be shy. "All right. No one appreciates you when you're down and you've had a tough day. You can praise Maitland, but I will be back." Then he turned to me with a sly smile. I'll leave you to talk about the case with Megan, Mr. Maitland. Just remember to get to bed early tonight. You older guys need your rest. She didn't even blush. Goodbye, Lou. As he walked away, I was left wondering what to say next. Do you have dinner plans, Bill? She asked. Not really. I thought about going back to the office to get ready for tomorrow. I was under the impression you were busy. I'm not asking for anything big, just to grab a bite to eat with me. She looked at me, her face neutral, and I felt my cheeks getting warm. I know, Megan, I'm sorry. You have to understand that my divorce just finished. I'm still learning how to handle these things. It's been a while, and I've heard great things about your practice. If I haven't made it too awkward, I'd love to have a salad or something with you. She looked at me thoughtfully. A salad? Bill? I've heard about your changes, and I could see them when I sat down here, but you really have transformed, haven't you? And by the way, I'm not busy anymore, if that matters. It doesn't, Megan. I've missed that smile of yours around the office. You always brightened our days. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, Bill. I've missed the kind of cases I worked on here. Other cases just don't feel the same. You did the right thing. Sometimes I wish I'd made a different choice, too. You don't really mean that. Sometimes I do. As we left, a few reporters approached me. I glanced at Megan, and she found a spot to sit on a bench outside the courtroom while I talked to the press, doing interviews for television and print media, including Carl Cameron. He usually wouldn't be one of the big names in a case like this, but the focus on his role made him important for interviews. The reporter from Courtroom Extra opened with, "The well-publicized case known as the Killer Granny involves 67-year-old Judy Johansson and has drawn a lot of attention, especially with lead prosecutor William Maitland, often called the Angel of Death, in charge. He is up against young attorney Lewis Walters, who has gained fame for his strong legal work. Walters is nicknamed the Shark for his bold tactics in the courtroom. Many say this is like a heavyweight boxing match between two top lawyers. Mr. Maitland, do you recognize the national interest in this high-profile case being debated by two well-known attorneys? Yes, I understand. People are always curious about crime, and murder captures a lot of interest. However, while I see why this case appeals to the media, I want everyone watching this broadcast to remember that this is not a TV show. These are real people, not characters from a story. Clark Carroll, the man at the center of this case, was a real person. His life was taken away from him. He was older, but his life mattered, and he had more years to live. The state believes and will show that Judy Johansson is responsible for his death for her own selfish reasons. I don't see this as a game. I don't care who gets recognized or who wins. My main goal is to ensure that justice is delivered and that someone who has done wrong faces the right consequences. I know you're interested in this case, but I stay focused on the facts. I felt free to speak openly because the judge had already set the jury aside and would keep them apart until the trial was over. It was clear that everyone would have opinions. We were told we could share thoughts as long as we didn't give the other side a chance to ask for a mistrial. After I finished, the reporter, Celestial Madonna, what a unique name, just stared at me as if she had lost her train of thought. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Maitland." She signaled her cameraman to stop filming and talked with him briefly before looking back at me, showing a bit of frustration. "I thought your boss wanted good publicity. This is a fascinating story, and that wasn't the best way to get people to want more interviews. The Angel of Death angle is a strong hook, but you need to play along. Would you like to try again and be a bit more friendly with the media?" "No," I replied plainly, enjoying the change in her expression. She seemed surprised by the way I treated her. "My boss loves being in the spotlight. I'm not worried about helping your ratings. As long as I come out on top, my boss won't mind me being honest. And I plan to win out for good publicity, but because the person involved needs to understand how serious her actions are. Is that fair enough?" She looked at me closely for a moment, then her face softened a bit. "Wow, you're tougher than I expected. This isn't just an act, is it?" "It's all me, Celestial. By the way, that can't be your real name, can it?" She smiled a small smile. Jane Thurman, from Pahokee, Florida. Actually, your interview plan will work. A strong attitude will contrast well with Walters. He's smooth, and I've covered him before." A tough person will be a strong contrast. Do you really think you can win? Are you going to stop her? I looked into her eyes, and for some reason I found myself staring for a moment before looking at her again. If you stick around, Jane, you can see for yourself. She gave me an unreadable look, and I felt a little shiver go up my spine. Where did that come from? This wasn't how I usually talk to women. I had just been divorced a few days ago. What was happening to me? It took me 45 minutes to finish all the interviews. I expected to find that Megan had left, but she approached me when I finished and said, "Look, you're going to be busy. How about meeting me at 6 p.m. at River City Brewing Company? We can catch up." I returned to the office and talked through plans for the next day with Heather McDonald. I also concluded a phone call with Sheriff Knight about the stalled case of Sean Smith, who was still waiting at a desk while his fellow officers were getting frustrated because I wouldn't clear him to go back to duty. As I finished my work, I thought of Megan and her friendly smile. I recalled some of the positive thoughts I'd had about her when she was around every day. Now I felt nervous about having dinner with her. When I was married, Debbie had helped me keep my impulses in check. Now all that responsibility was mine. I felt very uneasy. Monday, August 22nd, 2005, 4 p.m. Are you sure you're feeling well enough to continue, Miss Bascom? I'll be fine, Doctor. I just need to use your restroom for a moment. She stepped into the small restroom and rinsed her mouth. There was an odd taste that was bothering her, but she found some relief with a Tums from her purse. The evergreen flavor helped. When she returned to the couch and sat down, he looked at her with concern and said, "You've had these symptoms for over a day, have you?" "Yes, I took a test. That was the first thing I thought to do. I also have an appointment with my doctor, who is a good general physician. I'm not sure what's going on with me. It's probably nothing, but stomach issues along with pain and nausea could mean something more serious. Please see your doctor soon." "I will, Dr. Teller." She leaned back on the couch and took a deep breath. "What would you like to talk about today?" "You know I got a job with the public defender's office? Well, there's a big case starting today, the Killer Granny case, with Bill on one side and Lou Walters on the other. Most of the lawyers who had some free time went to watch, and I went too. I've heard of that case. I didn't know that your ex was on the prosecution side. Wasn't Walters your husband's divorce lawyer? That must make things complicated for you." She shared what she had seen. "And seeing how other women looked at your ex made you feel uneasy?" "Not uneasy. I know he's a free man now, and he has changed how he looks and acts. I get that. It's just that—" He smiled at her and rubbed his chin. "Miss Bascom, it's an age-old saying. We want what others want even more strongly. That's why people work hard to make each other jealous." He tapped his finger on the marble coffee table as he leaned forward, looking into her eyes. "You are, as we both know, a beautiful woman at a time when many find you attractive. Your husband, even though he has lost weight and seems to move better, is still an average-looking, middle-aged man. You could have a different partner every night if you wanted, but it still bothers you that your ex-husband is attracting attention. If he starts dating again, which he probably will unless there are big problems. Does he have any problems like that? Was he satisfied in your relationship?" "Yes, he was able to have a relationship. I felt tired and bored with how things were, and I don't think he was truly happy by the end. It felt a bit routine, if you know what I mean. But maybe that was just me. He seemed to enjoy it. Well, he seems to be feeling good after the divorce, so getting rid of me, as one of his friends said, seems to have helped him a lot? He's the perfect victim and I'm the bad guy? Is that what you think, Doctor?" He looked at her, a bit surprised, and then a small smile appeared. "Is that how you view yourself, Miss Bascom? I wasn't trying to reflect anything about you, just noting that many people find new energy after a divorce. A difficult marriage can be tough on both partners. When the stress goes away, even with new changes and sometimes feeling alone while trying to connect with others, people can begin to change themselves. Well, it sure seems that way. Those women were almost mesmerized. If they had been close before." She felt a wave of nausea and hurried back to the bathroom. Teller leaned back in his chair and listened to the sounds coming from the bathroom. It seemed her discomfort wasn't just a medical issue. It looked like her ex-husband had moved from upsetting her to making her feel physically unwell. He fiddled with his unlit pipe, a habit that kept his hands busy. Part of what she felt was likely regret. She had decided that her marriage was dull, that her husband did not meet her emotional needs, and that she deserved more. Ideally, Bill Maitland would have stayed sad about her leaving him, struggling with social and personal challenges. She might have felt sadness and pity for her ex, but she would have convinced herself that she made the right choice, that he could never bring her the happiness and satisfaction she desired. Of course, she was being a bit selfish, but that was part of being human. But to see the man she had pushed away becoming almost like a new person, to watch him succeed in ways he hadn't before, to see others appreciating a man she said she no longer wanted was confusing. Teller had to stay neutral in his role. He couldn't take sides since she was his patient, but he couldn't ignore a little satisfaction in seeing someone who had been overlooked now getting attention. Yet beneath feelings of jealousy and regret, there were deeper issues. There was still anger and turmoil within her, likely showing up in her physical state. Nausea is often a sign of unresolved feelings. He thought it might connect back to her relationship with her Aunt Clarice. Her marriage had many problems from different places, but something had triggered a big change in her. When she came back looking pale, he said, "You really should see a doctor. Would you think about hypnosis? I'd like to explore some parts of your past while you're in a light trance." "Do you think that would help? You said these feelings are new. If you can remember, did these feelings start around the time your divorce became final?" She put her face in her hands and took a few deep breaths. "Actually, I got sick the night the divorce was final. I don't remember my dreams, but they must have been frightening. I felt terrible the next day, not just physically, but also emotionally, and I stayed in bed until that evening. I felt sick all day long." She looked at him with a sudden understanding. "That's when everything changed, the day we really ended things. It's like he still has an impact on me, even though we're not together anymore." Her mood changed quickly. "Do you think I could take legal action for the stress he caused me after our divorce?" He smiled back at her. Despite having a good life, she had a sharp sense of humor, and he understood why Bill Maitland had cared for her for more than just her looks. Unfortunately, if that were possible, a lot of divorced people would be claiming stress against their ex-partners. He thought about it while handling his pipe. Of course, that would mean more work for divorce lawyers. She gave a sad smile. "You forget, I was married to a lawyer for 18 years, and now I work with them daily. I tend to think like one. It's like he's still lingering in my life." Teller looked at her and realized something he had always felt, but didn't fully recognize. "You seem like a lonely person, Miss Bascom." She looked at him quietly. "Men are often so distracted by my looks that they rarely see the real me or notice my sense of humor, and women usually don't want to be my friend." "It's okay, doctor." She looked down for a moment and sighed. I rested my head back on my pillow and took a deep breath. Megan leaned on her hands beside me. "Didn't Debbie ever do that for you?" "No. I didn't know that could happen." She smiled at me and I felt a strong connection between us. "She just let you enjoy her company?" "No. I don't know why I felt I needed to defend her, but I did. No, she was lively a long time ago. Things just changed over time." "She never had to work at it, did she? Not like me?" "Megan, it's not about comparing. You're amazing just the way you are." After a comfortable silence, she leaned over and gave me a gentle kiss. "You see what you missed, Mr. Maitland. You could have been with me years ago, but I never pushed because you were a nice, married man." "What's with the Mr. Maitland? You can just call me Bill." She smiled. "Somehow it felt better to call you Mr. Maitland. So, Bill, do you regret accepting my dinner invitation? What do you think? I think you had a nice time. Megan, I truly enjoyed being with you." She rested on one elbow and lightly kissed my nose. "Bill, you don't owe me anything. We had a good time, and that's it. We're just two old friends who spent time together. That's all." I glanced at her, thinking about how laid back it all felt. "I know, but... Bill, this was just a simple meeting. No strings attached. Let's keep it normal if we run into each other again or if I visit your office, okay?" "I understand, Megan. I might be only 10 years older than you, but I feel like I've aged a lot. When did I become so out of touch?" "The last 20 years or so." "You're just waking up to a different world." She gave me a gentle kiss and got out of bed. "For someone your age, you're still doing pretty well." Megan. She smiled. No, I didn't reach that point, but I had a nice time tonight. Sometimes these moments take time. I'm sorry. You really made an impression on me. Do I look unhappy? Let me get dressed, call a cab, and head out. You've got a big day tomorrow and you need your rest. Good luck. 10 minutes later, I walked her to the cab, came back inside, and locked the door. I set the alarm and lay back in bed, my mind racing with thoughts. I hadn't expected things to turn out this way. Megan was only the third woman I'd been with in 20 years. It should have meant more than it did. Aline was special. Debbie, despite everything, had been very important to me. Megan. Well, she was just someone I liked. But it felt casual. That's what was so odd. When I was married, something like this would have felt significant, even if it was just a brief moment. Now, as a single man, it felt empty. I felt like I had entered a world I didn't recognize. A stranger in a strange land. That was me. Wednesday, August 24th, 2005, 11:30 p.m. Mr. Ballantyne, can I call you Jerry? The big man, dressed uncomfortably in a suit and tie, shifted around in the witness seat as Lou walked around him like a hunter circling its prey. Yeah, that's my name. Lou looked at him with an intense gaze, ready for his moment. All right, Jerry, let's clarify this. You're a bartender and you use dating websites for social connections. Is that right? Yeah, so what? There's nothing wrong with that. I like meeting people and they like meeting me. When Carol comes to testify, you should expect her to say something different. Ballantyne's face grew serious. You don't know what you're talking about. Lou kept eye contact with the jury. We'll see how the evidence matches your story. The differences in your account raise serious doubts about your honesty. For a moment, the courtroom was silent, the tension thick. Lou took a step back, thinking about his next point. It's interesting how your relationships with these women seem to follow a pattern, wouldn't you agree? It's not just their age that matters, but the companionship and financial support you seem to have gained. Ballantyne shifted nervously. I won't deny I enjoyed their company, but that doesn't mean I was using them. People form connections for all kinds of reasons. Lou crossed his arms. Yet your pattern suggests a business-like nature in these connections, wouldn't you say? Some might even describe your approach as calculated. You have no right to judge me or my relationships, Ballantyne shot back. Perhaps not, Lou replied calmly. But I do have a right to question the honesty of your testimony here today. Our investigation is not just based on stories. The evidence shows a more complex situation than you want to see. The courtroom was filled with murmurs as Lou prepared to share more details about the case. Carol is cleared. I will do everything I can to see you charged with lying under oath. He turned back to face Ballantyne. Detective McDonald said that after meeting you on the dating site Plenty of Fish, and after you got to know each other, you told her that you knew Mrs. Carroll before her husband's sad passing. Ballantyne stopped speaking but looked at me nervously. I shook my head slightly, having prepared him for what I thought would be Lou's attack on our key witness. Lou went on. Mr. Maitland has presented recordings made by Detective McDonald, which seem to be natural conversations between you two. You have, somewhat hesitantly, confirmed that these conversations are real. He moved away from Ballantyne and came to my desk, looking at me with disapproval. I am sure you understand now, Mr. Ballantyne, that you were involved in a carefully planned scheme led by Mr. Maitland and carried out by Detective McDonald. However, I am curious about one thing. As a careful police officer, did Detective McDonald use any wrong methods to convince you about her story as a lonely, wealthy woman? Did she make any promises to influence your words against Miss Carroll? How far would Detective McDonald go to gain your support? I stood up and walked to the judge, raising my voice to show my frustration to the jury. Your Honor, I ask that you tell the jury to ignore this baseless attack on the character of a hard-working police officer. Mr. Walters knows very well that Detective McDonald did not act in any improper way to secure Mr. Ballantyne's statement, and that no such questionable promises were made. Lou looked at me and gave a small, subtle smile that the jury could not see. Unfortunately, Your Honor, I haven't worked as closely with Detective McDonald as Mr. Maitland, so I can't comment on her methods. I know she has used different techniques during investigations before, and I wonder if she has any limits on what she might do to gain support. Before I could reply, Lou turned to the judge and said, "I will take back those comments, Your Honor, and you may instruct the jury to ignore them." After Judge Pizarro agreed, Lou faced Ballantyne and began what I thought would be his main challenge to his reliability. "Mr. Ballantyne, it's clear from Detective McDonald's words that you basically admitted to a relationship with Miss Carroll while under the influence. Detective McDonald recorded your statements, and when you were clearer in your mind, she and Mr. Maitland encouraged you to follow through with what you said. I have to question why you haven't been charged with anything," he said. "You knew about a plan against Mr. Carroll and stood to make money from it, yet you never informed the police. Most lawyers would suggest you could be seen as an accomplice. But no charges have been brought against you. Why is that?" "I think you should ask Mr. Maitland that." "I don't think that's necessary. The jury can figure out why you haven't been charged. They can see that you were trying to win favor with what you thought was a wealthy older woman, and that you spoke about your connection to her in a way that could link you to a significant case. Once you admitted that connection and shared details about hotel stays and phone calls, Mr. Maitland and the police could have pressured you with the chance of charge, unless you made up your story regarding Mrs. Carroll's feelings about her husband. My belief, Mr. Ballantyne, is that you did have a relationship with Mrs. Carroll. While that raises questions about her being married, you do have a reputation for charming older women. However, I don't think she ever admitted to wanting to harm her husband. The state has believed this since Mr. Carroll's unfortunate accidental poisoning. They, guided by Mr. Maitland, pursued leads to see if Mrs. Carroll was involved with anyone. I have to give credit to Mr. Maitland and the state for carrying out a difficult investigation. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, but they did uncover results. They confirmed your connection with Mrs. Carroll, which they might say gives you a motive related to her husband's death." He moved closer and spoke convincingly. I doubted anyone who didn't know him well could tell that his anger was put on. But sadly, Mr. Maitland seems to let the attention he gets from being called the Angel of Death guide his actions. He is determined to seek the harshest punishments for everyone he prosecutes, no matter the truth of their cases. Thus, he wasn't satisfied with merely damaging Mrs. Carroll's reputation. He wanted to make sure her guilt was unquestionable through pressured testimonies. Mr. Ballantyne, I argue that Mr. Maitland and Detective McDonald pushed you regarding possible prosecution. Even if Mrs. Carroll escaped the worst consequences, being tried separately might still leave you exposed to lesser charges. And even a lesser charge could mean years in prison. Unless you are ready to remember her telling you about her plans for Mr. Carroll. I believe your words against Mrs. Carroll were forced and not true, made just to protect yourself. I stood up. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Walters has made up a story to discredit Mr. Ballantyne's words. He has no real proof for his claims and even suggested that I broke the rules of my profession. If he truly believed what he says, he should report me to the state bar. He should also file charges against Detective McDonald for wrong actions. But he won't do that because he knows this is just a distraction for the jury. Mrs. Carroll was involved with Mr. Ballantyne. She did confess her plans to him. No threats were made to get Mr. Ballantyne to share his story. Judge Pizarro looked carefully at Lou. He was not impressed, having seen many legal tricks in his 30 years as a judge. He said, "I won't tell the jury to ignore your comments, Mr. Walters, as you have the right to present other views of the case. However, you usually need some real proof to support your arguments. I'll let the jury decide if you have provided any." Lou shrugged it off and turned to the jury. "I'll leave it to you to decide how much of what I've said is guesswork. When you think about this, consider the character of the state's main witness, a man who has built his life around tricking and leaving others behind. Ask yourself if you believe he would lie about a past relationship to avoid jail. Use your common sense, and I'm sure you'll come to the right decision." No further questions. I stood up and asked, "Mr. Ballantyne, Mr. Walters has suggested that Detective McDonald influenced your story in a wrong way. Is there any truth to that?" He looked at Heather, who appeared professional and calm, and then gave me a hard look. "Yes, to the second part. No to the first. She was a bit friendly, and we had some talks that got kind of personal, but nothing really happened beyond that. I thought things might go further, but they didn't. I ended up saying things I wouldn't have said if I hadn't been trying to impress her. She definitely promised me her help to get me to talk in the first place." But after I told her about Judy, she became very serious. Once she got the information she needed, she wasn't as open anymore, and when talking about Judy's plans, there were no threats involved. But I was aware of the dangers. If I tried to testify for Judy or stayed quiet, I knew there would be problems. The only way to protect myself was to be honest and tell you everything I knew. That way, no matter what happened in your case, I would be safe. As Judge Pizarro ended the court session for the day, Lou came over. "Nice job, Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, but your main witness is not strong. The jurors know he's not reliable and would turn on anyone to help himself. His words won't change the jury's mind." "You did a decent job, Lou, but we already understood he wasn't trustworthy. We make do with what we have." I looked around the courtroom as it emptied quickly. She was sitting on the left side with the other guests. She was dressed more simply than I remembered from our college days. Still, she had a charm that drew attention. She was looking at us, but her face didn't show much. "Why don't you go over and say hi to her?" "I have nothing to say. This is like middle school all over again. Want me to deliver a message?" "Lou, there's nothing to say. How about saying, now that we're divorced and single, I'd love to catch up?" She stood up and left, and even the way she walked away was striking. I wish she hadn't taken that job. It's hard to see her every day. Have you thought that maybe that's why she took it? To remind you of what you lost? To make you think again? It's a complicated situation. Wednesday, August 24th, 2005, 4 p.m. I was heading to my office when I saw Cheryl waving at me. I turned to see what she wanted, feeling a moment of pause. A familiar face from my past stood in front of me, and before I knew it, she had hugged me. I probably looked surprised as she greeted me warmly. Then she stepped back and gave me a curious look. "I know you divorced Debbie, but did you leave me too?" After a moment, I collected my thoughts. "Clarice, where did you come from?" Debbie's younger sister, not as pretty as her but still appealing, reached out and touched my face with a smile. "You sure know how to welcome someone after 7 years, especially for someone who had a crush on you." "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's nice to see you." "Really?" She smiled, and over her shoulder I saw Cheryl's surprised and curious face. "Debbie's younger sister," I silently told her. "You remembered, Bill. Am I still your favorite?" When I first met Debbie, Clarice was just a kid. Her admiration was so clear that I had to be careful, always calling her baby sister. And she had stayed that way until she moved from the U.S. with her husband almost 10 years ago. "Of course, Clarice. You will always have a special place." She hugged me again and said, "I came because Mom told me what's happening. She's written to me and we've talked a few times." I couldn't believe it. "Let's go into my office, Clarice." I closed the door behind us. She sat in one chair while I took another. She wore a green pantsuit that matched her eyes. So, I talked to Debbie on the phone when I got to the airport this morning, and I'll call her again tonight when she's home. I told her my thoughts. "Take it easy, Clarice. People get divorced. It happens all the time. It was just our time." She reached out and placed her hand on my knee. "I don't understand why you didn't speak up for yourself. You're a lawyer here. You could have defended yourself. I can't imagine why you didn't." "Things aren't always simple, Clarice. I'll let her explain it to you. I'm sure she has her reasons." She reached out again and took my hand. "Jimmy and I have been away for a long time, Bill. People change. I could see you two divorcing, but not like this." I squeezed her hand, still seeing the young girl she used to be. "It's in the past now, Clarice. We're divorced. She's starting fresh, and I'm trying to move on too. Don't let what happened cause issues between you two." "You're sisters! Family! I'm just the ex now." "No, you're not just an ex. You're James Jr. and Kathleen's uncle. You'll always be their uncle and my favorite brother-in-law." I had seen pictures, but had never met my niece and nephew in person. "They're with you? Are you back for good?" "They're at Mom and Dad's right now. I want you to promise you'll come visit. Tonight if you can, but sometime in the next week. We'll be here for a week." Jimmy couldn't get time off, but we're planning to move to a civilian job by the next year. Clarice worked with an agency connected to the U.S. State Department, and Jimmy was in a similar job. They had been stationed around the world for the past 10 years, most recently in Tokyo. "Are you coming back to Florida?" "I'd like that, but we might be sent to Washington." "Close enough. It'll be great to have you back in the States. I wish I wish you guys could have been here when things were better. So do I. But just remember, no matter what happens with Debbie, no matter who she ends up with, you're family and you always will be. I feel the same way, Clarice. Kelly might remember you, but I don't think BJ will. He was too young. I hope we can arrange for them both to see you and the kids before you leave. By the way, what is Jimmy doing these days? She smiled and said, "Oh, just a few things." Then she added, "I've got to go home now. Promise me you'll visit Mom and Dad's." She stood up and was about to leave when she turned back and hugged me. "You look younger than I remember. I like the new look. Deb must be jealous seeing you looking so well. If I didn't love Jimmy, I might have been interested." I smiled at her, thinking of that young girl who used to tease me and her sister. And now I'm free and you love your husband. Who said life doesn't have a sense of humor? After she left, I settled back in my chair and reminisced about the good old days. But the memories became too painful, so I shifted my focus from the past to what lay ahead. Wednesday, August 24th, 2005, 5 p.m. "Keep your eyes on the watch," Teller said in a calm voice. He dimmed the lights, but there was still enough light to see. Debbie rested on the couch while he sat beside her, moving the coffee table aside. He held his grandfather's pocket watch, hanging from a silver chain, in front of Debbie's face. She looked up at it, tilting her head slightly. A soft sound of a grandfather clock played in the background. "Just watch the watch, Miss Bascom." He began to let the watch swing gently back and forth in front of her eyes. "Think only about the watch. Notice how the light reflects on it. Back and forth, and back and..." This was a classic technique that had been used for many years. It had always worked for him, and he hoped it would work now. The woman was smart and strong-willed, and often those traits made people more open to suggestion. He wasn't sure how effective the first session would be, especially if her memory was painful and buried deep, which it seemed to be. But he believed most memories would eventually come to the surface. "You're feeling very tired, Debbie. Your eyes are getting heavier. You've not slept well for a long time. You're so tired. You're trying to keep your eyes open, but they are getting heavier, heavier, heavier." In 5 minutes, she was breathing deeply. He stood up, took a towel from the bathroom, and placed it on her chest, tucking it gently under her neck. "Can you hear me, Debbie?" "Yes, Dr. Teller." "Do you know where you are?" "Yes." "Where are you?" "In your office. I want you to relax and think of nothing. Imagine you are floating in an empty space. There is nothing around you. Are you floating?" "Yes, it feels good." "You're starting to feel a strange sensation in your stomach. There's an odd taste in your mouth. Your throat feels tight. You're trying to swallow, but it's difficult. Are you feeling uneasy?" Yes. Oh." Pause for a moment. "You are still, not unwell, not uneasy, just still. You are like a statue." She breathed deeply, looking calm. "Now, Debbie, I would like you to go back to just before that strange feeling came over you. Where are you? What are you doing?" For a moment, he didn't understand what was happening, but the motions she was making with her mouth were clear. Stunned, he saw that her face showed a lot of discomfort. He quickly grabbed the bucket he had placed by the couch and held her as she reacted in distress. She took deep, heavy breaths as she tried to calm down. He gently cradled her head, even though she was visibly upset, and the table and floor were in a mess. Finally, all that was left was soft crying, and he continued to stroke her blonde hair. "It's okay, Debbie. It's over now. You're okay," he said, not paying attention to the smell or the mess on his clothes. It was clear that something upsetting had happened, but he couldn't understand what. Eventually, he was able to help her back onto the couch. He took a towel, emptied the bucket, and cleaned up the office as best as he could. Before leaving, he planned to call the cleaning staff to make sure everything was tidy. He had mostly kept the mess off her. He gently wiped the spots off her blouse, arms, and hands. Once everything was as clean as possible, he leaned closer and whispered, "Debbie, wake up. Wake up." After a moment, she opened her eyes and tried to sit up. He held her shoulders gently, encouraging her to relax. "It's okay, Debbie. It's Dr. Teller. You're in my office. You're safe now. Do you remember anything about what just happened?" Her eyes widened as she looked around the room, starting to understand where she was. Her face showed that the earlier distress was still affecting her. No. Where? What happened? What? I tried a method to help you understand what's been bothering you. It seems you went back to a very difficult time in your life and became overwhelmed. If you can't remember it all right now, don't worry, just try to relax. She lay back and started to cry. What is wrong with me, doctor? He hesitated, unsure of how to explain what he had seen. He knew it could be connected to many upsetting experiences. I don't know, honestly, Debbie, but I think we made some progress today. We can explore your feelings together. We will need to be careful next time. With time, you may find clarity. I don't know if I want to. I can't remember anything, and I still feel terrible. Do you want to feel like this forever? If you don't face it, it might keep coming back. Doctor, I'm scared. I really don't know why, but my heart is racing. He reached out and held her hands gently. You're still here, Miss Bascom. No matter what happened, you survived. With time and support, you will feel better. Friday, August 26th, 2005, 4 p.m. I stopped at Lou's table. He had stepped away to talk to someone in the audience. Judy Johansson sat across from me with an amused look. I hadn't had a private chat with her since the trial began, even though I had spent time questioning her. I knew I had upset her, but I didn't think I had secured a final victory. You know you're not a good person, right, Mr. Maitland? She said, her southern accent starting to show. Only a bad person would know another bad person, Miss Johansson. That's Miss Carroll to you. I'm just an innocent widow. You're trying to push a grandmother into a terrible situation. How do you sleep at night? I leaned over the desk and looked straight into her eyes. I was about to ask you the same, Judy. Your husband loved you for 5 years. It wasn't his fault he was old and that his medicine changed things between you. He cut his own kids out of his will to make you wealthy. I glanced around. No one was nearby. We weren't allowed to talk to defendants without their lawyers, but I didn't mind. I often wonder, Judy, how do people like you live with themselves? Even if you win and are rich, don't you see his face when you close your eyes? Don't you have bad dreams? You must have been kind once. You were a child with loved ones. When did that change? Or are you just pretending to be human? She looked at me and I caught a glimpse of something real beneath her cool exterior. It was clear she wasn't entirely sane, but there was a starkness within her. I'll sleep well, Mr. Maitland. My husband loved me, and he would want me to enjoy my fortune. I might send you postcards from some beautiful place. No one sends postcards from jail, Judy, and that's where you might be headed. Are you ready to bet $30 million on that? She smiled confidently. No, but you are. I pretended to sort through some papers on my desk. I was actually moving one specific page around to build the suspense. All the witnesses had spoken, and Lou had made what I believed was a mistake by putting Judy on the stand to show her as a helpless widow worth $30 million. In doing so, he had given me one last chance. I knew he thought he had won. Maybe he did. He was almost bursting with pride, and I had to admire him, even if he could be really frustrating at times. But the game wasn't finished yet. There was still one last chance to take. I turned to the jury. There were 7 women and 5 men, which was another reason Lou felt he had an advantage. 3 were in their 60s, and the rest were younger. There has been much testimony, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Walters has done his best to make this case confusing. I gave him a nod because he had done his usual great job. This is a straightforward case. Judy Johansson married a very rich man, and he changed his will to make her wealthy after he passed away. For a year before his death, she had an affair with a man 25 years younger than her. Whether you believe the words of Mr. Ballantyne, her companion, or not, she was unfaithful to her husband for a year. Then she made a mistake. This mistake, it seems, made her a wealthy woman, got rid of a difficult husband, and gave her the freedom to spend his money as she pleased. A lucky accident, some might say. We can discuss how likely that accident was, but please remember the law doesn't require us to prove our case with no doubt, just with reasonable doubt. We have shown that Miss Johansson had enough motive to want her husband out of her life. Her story about a mistake with his medication isn't believable, and she didn't show enough care for him during the last years of his life. Lou looked at me like he felt sorry for me, thinking I was grasping at anything for his client. I returned to my desk and picked up the stack of papers. Jessica nodded at me, knowing what I was about to share. I walked toward Lou and his client while going through the papers. In our search, we found several documents from her husband. One of them is this. I don't believe Miss Johansson has seen it. It was found among her husband's things after he passed. It was a card he meant to give her on her 66th birthday, which was just 6 days after his death. I moved closer to Judy but made sure the jury could see her clearly. Judy, I am writing this because I struggle to find the right words. When I try to say how I feel about you, it often comes out wrong. I'm just a grocer, nothing more. I cared for Ethel all my life, but I don't think I ever showed her that the right way. We didn't have those years together, but I want you to know that I care for you deeply. I know you married me for my wealth, and that's okay. I'm an older man and couldn't be what you needed for a long time. You are still a wonderful woman, and many admire you. I understand this, and I think you can feel what I mean. But what's important is this. It doesn't matter. I'm not sure I ever loved Ethel as I do you. She was a good person, but at this point in my life, I finally understand what love means. Your happiness means more to me than my own. And I guess that is what truly matters. I won't be here much longer. I'm not uneducated, just not well learned. When I'm gone, I hope you remember how much I cared for you. I looked at Judy for a moment, then at the jury, especially the women. He never signed it, but handwriting analysis shows it was written by Miss Johansson's husband. I looked back at Judy and saw what I expected. I walked over to the jury box. One woman in her 60s was a retired teacher. Her husband had passed away 5 years ago. Mrs. Cochran, I see tears in your eyes. You didn't know the victim. Why do you feel this way? She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. It's nothing. I just thought of Steve, my husband. He was quite reserved. One year he bought me a simple gift for our anniversary, but I knew he cared. It feels like something he would have wanted to say. I scanned the jurors' faces. The women looked engaged, while the men seemed to look away, as often happens in emotional moments. I pointed to Judy Johansson, and all the jurors followed my gaze. She stared back at them, looking tense. They seemed surprised, and she tried to keep calm. Mrs. Cochran, you didn't know her husband, yet his words touched you. Because you have loved a man. Look at Mrs. Johansson. All of you look. I think she's acting, but I trust your judgment based on your own experiences. Do you see any sign of sorrow or love in her eyes? I could have been reading a simple list, but these were the words of her husband, a man she said she loved and shared many years with. He has been gone for a year. But can feelings for someone you cared about really fade away completely in such a short time? I walked back to where Judy sat with Lou and noticed a hint of doubt in his eyes for the first time. I've shared the state's case, and Mr. Walters has pointed out the doubts you should think about. Remember, to convict Miss Johansson of murder, you only have to find reasonable doubt. The crucial part is understanding what was in her heart when she mistakenly handled his medication. If you believe she loved her husband and made an honest mistake, then you should find her not guilty. If you think she acted out of greed, I believe the facts we presented support a conviction of first-degree murder. I pretended to step away, but turned back toward her and leaned in slightly. She didn't move away. I believe Clark Carroll found peace in his last moments, Judy. I think that when the pain came, he understood what was happening. He already knew about your secret, and even as a grocer, he understood what it was like to feel heartache. He likely had strong feelings for you, and I think when he understood how you felt about him, it really struck him. I chose to walk away from her without turning back. Tuesday, August 30th, 2005. 1 p.m. I was in the office talking to a police officer in a small county about a case involving a man who had hurt his ex-wife. It seemed he might escape facing the consequences for his actions when Cheryl peeked into my office. She looked pale and had tears in her eyes. They just called, Bill. They have a decision in the Judy Johansson case. Please call Heather McDonald and ask her to come to the courtroom. Then find someone to cover for you and go home to rest. Really, Cheryl, you need to take some time for yourself. Just check in with me every few days to let me know you're okay. You're very kind, Bill. I appreciate it. It would take too long to train someone new. She smiled as she left my office. I grabbed my briefcase and stepped out. The jury had been considering the case for 5 days. The judge made them work through the weekend without a break, which made them unhappy, but Pizarro was strict about getting results. It had been a nice weekend. I visited the Bascoms, saw Kathy and Roy, and spent time with Clarice and my new niece and nephew. They were good kids. Kelly came over too, and she looked a lot like her mother, which was a mix of happy and sad. Mom and Charles even brought BJ up to see us. I thought it might be tense, but Debbie stayed quiet. Clint Abbott showed up and took her out shortly after I arrived. When she came out of her old room after talking with Clarice, she looked unwell and gave me odd looks, but I tried not to dwell on it. Clint and I shook hands and had a short chat. Debbie's parents seemed to like him, or at least they were starting to warm up to him, unlike how they were with Doug. It still felt a bit awkward, but we managed to act like family members who hadn't seen each other in a long time. Now, I was entering Pizarro's courtroom. Lou was already there. I suspected he had a source on Pizarro's staff who kept him informed about things like this. He approached me and shook my hand. "It was a good show, old man. Sorry I had to win this time, no hard feelings." He smiled at the end. "Just remember not to take it too hard when you lose, kid." Heather walked in behind me and touched my arm. I turned around, surprised at how she looked even more striking. She wore a light blue blouse with fitted jeans, and she certainly made an impression. Lou noticed my look and said seriously, "Sergeant McDonald, I apologize for having to challenge you in court." It wasn't a big deal. He reached out his hand, but she didn't take it. "I don't understand why you'd want to shake hands with someone like me who has unusual ways of getting answers." He stepped back a bit. "It's just part of the job, Sergeant, nothing personal." She looked at him closely. "I took it personally." I touched her shoulder gently. "You might not believe it now, Heather, but he's a good guy. I wouldn't be his friend if he wasn't." "I can't see how you could be, but he's definitely not on my good side." Lou pretended to shiver, then shrugged and walked away. "He can be tough. He can be, but he's been there for me when I needed help, Heather." She placed her hand softly on my waist. "I still think he's difficult, but for your sake, I won't make a scene." We were surrounded by reporters, lawyers, and camera crews rushing in from outside, but with her hand on my waist, it felt like we were in our own world. I had to look away, worried about embarrassing myself. I touched her elbow and said as professionally as I could, "Please sit at the front, Heather. The judge will be here soon." As she turned to leave, I noticed Debbie walking into the courtroom. We exchanged looks, and I couldn't help but smile. In just a few minutes, the courtroom filled up with reporters jotting down notes and a media representative ready to cover the event. Judy entered and spoke briefly with Lou. Then she glanced at me, and we shared a smile like old friends. Then the jury came back, and everyone was looking at the foreman, a short, heavy-set man. The judge asked if they had reached a decision. When the foreman said yes, he was asked to stand and face Judy. I watched his lips move, but it took a moment for the words to sink in. I focused on Judy's expression when the verdict was read as well as Lou's. Guilty of first-degree murder. I watched in surprise as reporters hurried out of the courtroom. Judy's son stood to speak to the jury, and more bailiffs moved toward the audience. In a surprising moment, Heather was suddenly in my arms. She had rushed around the desk and hugged me before I could react. "We did it, Bill! We did it! We got her!" I tried to keep my feelings in check, but it felt like a win. I stole a glance at Judy Johansson, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the room. I wondered what it was like to feel such joy one moment and then sadness the next. I can't say I felt happy, but I felt a sense of accomplishment. For a moment, everything seemed to make sense. I leaned back in my chair with Heather beside me, holding my hand. Pizarro instructed that Judy be taken into custody, thanked the jurors, and let them go. People chatted for a bit. Lou had a short talk with Judy before she was led away, giving her a reassuring touch on her shoulder, then spoke to her son. After that, he took a seat. I looked over at the audience and saw that Debbie had already left. Lou approached me and shook his head. "Wow, Bill, I didn't think you could pull it off. Sometimes you win, and sometimes... Just a reminder, I'd never play poker with you. You've got all the luck." He started to turn away, but then paused. I had to show concern, but honestly, Bill, she was guilty. We both know it. So today, the good folks won. Heather walked with me as we left the courtroom. Many news crews, from local to international, were waiting for me. I was about to speak to one reporter when Heather squeezed my hand. "Oh, don't you remember, Mr. Maitland? We have that meeting to get to before any interviews." I smiled quickly at the reporter and said, "I'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes. Please hold on." We hurried to the state attorney's office. It was lunchtime and the floor was mostly empty. I entered an empty office, closed the door, and locked it. I remember some sounds being made, and I must have said something, but I couldn't recall exactly what later. She was moving close and took my hand, guiding me gently. Not long after, I felt a wave of emotions and thought it was best to leave. Each moment felt more intense. I leaned forward, thinking about how I needed to tidy up before Raoul got back and to avoid any rumors. As we separated, she looked at me and smiled, saying, "I think you really like me, Mr. Maitland." Then she added, "I really needed that." I replied, "I guess I did too. I've never felt something so strong so quickly." She touched my cheek softly and said, "It seems we've both had these feelings for some time. Today just felt right. It's great that we made it here. I was feeling really stressed." She chuckled gently. "And I would have understood. Do you think you could grab some paper towels or something for cleanup?" After that, I walked her to the elevator without drawing attention, being careful not to hold hands in front of others. Heather?" She reached out and shook my hand in a formal way for the benefit of onlookers. "We got a bit carried away, Bill. We've been working together closely for a while, and with today's events, it was all a bit much. There are worse reasons for what happened." It was certainly a memorable celebration. She let go of my hand and said, "Go on, you have interviews to do." I think we managed to fit that in around 15 minutes. As the elevator doors opened, she encouraged me to step inside with a smile. "Your reputation is going to grow after this. You actually got a result in such a big case. I might need to schedule some time with you, Mr. Maitland." The next few hours were filled with media interviews, and I felt my confidence increasing. Around 4 p.m., I got a call from my supervisor. "Bill, could you go to courtroom 4? Peters is there with the driver involved in that hit and run that hurt those 2 kids. The lawyer isn't agreeing with the plea deal we offered 15 years with no chance for early release." "What do you need me to do?" "Just go into the courtroom and talk to Peters for a few minutes." "Why?" "I just spent nearly 3 hours giving you lots of free publicity. And I appreciate it. Please help me out." So I walked into courtroom 4 and spoke with Peters, a young blonde guy who looked much younger than me. I noticed a man next to him staring at me strangely. After a quick chat with his lawyer, a woman who I assumed was the defendant's wife, she leaned in to whisper something to them. "Your Honor," the defense attorney said, getting the attention of Circuit Judge Dominic DeLauro, who looked up from some papers. Your Honor, my client has changed his mind. We'll accept the state's plea." DeLauro raised an eyebrow and smiled slightly. "Are you sure, Mr. Richards? I thought you said your client would never agree to 15 years. You were planning to prove his innocence." The defense attorney glanced at Peters, then at me, and suddenly I realized the situation had changed. "We've thought it over, Your Honor." DeLauro smiled at me. When I got back to my office, the phone was ringing. The big man sounded happy. "I think I'm going to have you present in every courtroom we have a trial in. At this rate, we won't need to try many more cases." I would have made a joke, but I was still a bit shocked. It seemed that my presence had truly affected the decision to accept the plea. It felt almost surreal. As 5 p.m. approached, I was finishing up some tasks, answering congratulatory calls, and thinking about whether to go to Hurley's or Carlos's place. I felt energized and ready for anything. I had tackled a tough case, made significant progress in my career, and felt an unusual boost of confidence. At that moment, it seemed I could achieve anything. Then the phone rang again, and out of weariness, I picked it up. Susie, a secretary filling in for Cheryl, said, "I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Maitland, but there's a woman out here asking to see you." "I really don't want to see anyone, Susie." "If she's a reporter, get her name and tell her I'll call her tomorrow. She said it's important and that you might want to talk to her." "She wouldn't share her name." "No, sir." "All right," I said quietly before giving in. "Okay, Susie, I'll give her 5 minutes. Tell her." As I leaned down to grab some papers from a bottom drawer, I heard her voice. "I'd rather have more than 5 minutes, but I'll take what I can get." I paused. I caught a hint of her perfume first, and when she reached out to touch my face, I noticed a hint of mint. She pulled back, looking down at me, and I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. "You wouldn't come to me, Mr. Maitland, so I had to come to you." I was standing there, our closeness feeling intense as I looked into her sea-green eyes. Words failed me. "I have 2 weeks, Bill. If you don't want me to stay, I can leave. I can go down south if that's easier for you." I drew her closer and after a moment spoke earnestly. "I don't want you to go, Aline. I don't want you to go." 2 weeks is a long time. My name is William Maitland. 6 months ago, I was a happy husband and father of 2 teenagers. I felt fortunate in my life and had a job at the state attorney's office that kept me engaged while my boss ran for governor. I knew who I was, and I was content. I faced personal challenges, being aware of my weaknesses and the growing distance in my marriage. My wife, Debbie, whom I had loved for years, seemed to see me only as a provider rather than as a partner. I had changed over time, and the attention I once received felt like a distant memory. But I often reminded myself that no one has it all figured out. I had my lifelong partner by my side, and a meaningful career that allowed me to make a difference. Then, everything changed. In just a few weeks, I realized that my wife no longer loved me. Our family dynamics shifted dramatically, leaving me feeling inadequate. It was as if I lost my sense of who I was. I found comfort in good friends who helped pull me from a dark place and helped me reclaim my life. I worked on my health and learned that it's possible to heal even when the person you care for most brings deep sadness. With patience and support, especially from a special friend and a kind woman, I began to find strength and a renewed sense of identity. Despite the pain, my feelings for Debbie lingered, even as I faced the truth of our distance. But now, I knew I could live without her. Just days away from my 42nd birthday and stepping into what many call middle age, I had won a big court case and brought someone to justice. I thought my world had started to make sense again. Then she walked back into my life. Wednesday, August 31st, 2005, 9 p.m. I stood in the dunes in the humid darkness, holding someone close to me, feeling her warmth as we stood together. I gently rested my head against her neck, enjoying the soft scent of her hair. I pointed toward the darkness. The horizon was just a slightly darker line against the night sky. "If you go about 4,500 miles that way towards the northeast, you'd be able to see the French coast," I said. She didn't reply, but I could tell we were both thinking about what was beyond that horizon: her husband, her son, her family, and her life. In the distance, I noticed some flickering lights, small dots in the dark, looking like stars just above the horizon. "Those are probably shrimp boats," I said as she turned to where the Atlantic Ocean met the sky. "They could be cruise ships, but more likely they're shrimpers coming into St. Augustine or heading towards Mayport." She leaned back against me, tilting her head. I cherished the moment. "Do you think they could be cruise ships?" she asked. "Sometimes they come this close to the shore, but usually you don't see them this far north unless they're going back to Blount Island. Most ships travel from southern ports to the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, so it's uncommon. A few do come from northern ports." She smiled at me. It felt exciting, and in that moment I wondered if she missed it that much. "Aline, would you rather be out there in the dark, looking back at the lights of the shore?" "Maybe," she said softly, "if you were out there with me." I held her close, feeling like everything around us was turning. Since yesterday, when she had come into my office, nothing felt certain anymore. I knew she had been away, living her life on the French cruise ship Bon Chance, traveling around the world. It had stopped in Jacksonville for a bit and then moved on to southern ports. It probably would never come back, and neither would she. I had told myself many times in the weeks before the Bon Chance finally sailed away for good that this was for the best. Aline was a married woman with a son, and her husband was a good man whom I had considered a friend, though he wasn't completely faithful and had affairs in Paris while she was working at sea. Still, he wasn't a bad person overall. "Do you think Philippe would mind if I became a regular companion on the cruise?" she asked playfully. He will never find out. It's best that way. I thought you would tell him that I gave you the fleur-de-lis pendant. You could say I was a passenger and you helped me in a way. And you would wear the pendant proudly for the rest of your life. How can you keep it if he doesn't know who gave it to you? She stepped back a bit, and the cool night breeze blew through the dunes, lightly touching her dark bangs. The fleur-de-lis lay against her chest, its diamond center sparkling in the moonlight. I thought I could tell him some things without sharing everything, even if he might notice. I thought he wouldn't mind, since he's doing the same, but what? He's not naive. In fact, he reminds me of you. He is very smart and observant. How can he? You remember when I said you were unique? Yes. I mentioned that the others were just distractions. They never posed a real issue for Philippe. I think he knew that. I don't believe he ever had anyone watch me. He could feel if someone else mattered, but you. What about me? I spoke carefully, aware of the sensitive nature of our conversation. This feeling had been present in every word we shared since I first looked into her eyes the day before. You want me to say it out loud? She asked. One of us has to. Every day after I walked away from you, each morning I woke up. I fought the urge to reach out to you, to return to Bon Chance. Every part of me wanted to be with you, but I couldn't. Because it would mean breaking every rule I've ever lived by, going against everything I believe in. But I struggled with that. I couldn't come to you, yet I couldn't push you away when you came to me. That doesn't make what we're doing right. She gently held my face in her hands. I felt a strange emotion that sent chills down my back. It wasn't just the night air, it was a strong awareness of our bond, and now I understood what I was afraid of. I told you I felt something when I first saw you, Bill. It was the same feeling I had years ago when I first noticed Philippe at that party. That night changed everything for me. I am devoted to him, so I can't feel these same emotions for you. She gazed at me with those deep sea-green eyes. I can't fall in love with you. I'm a married woman. I love my husband. I love my son. I have a life and a family. I shouldn't be here tonight. So why am I here? Because, as I should have told Father Dunleavy, life can be ironic. You love Philippe and you have a life you can't let go of. I don't have that life anymore, but I care for a woman I shouldn't, yet I do. You still care for her even though you don't want to? What about me, Bill? What do you feel for me? You've never really said. I don't know what you think about me, except that you value my company and you were thankful for my help in moving forward. There was a strange look on her face, a mixture of fear, pride, worry, and something else I couldn't quite name. We've only known each other for a week. We really don't know each other very well, Aline. We met in a dream, and that's all we have. But I think I might have feelings for you that I haven't felt for anyone else in the last 20 years, except for Debbie. In the past week, I connected with 2 other women, and it was nice, but it didn't mean anything. You mean something. What does it mean to mean something? Now you're acting like a lawyer. She wasn't smiling. She looked very serious. What am I to you, Bill? I care about her, Aline. I have complicated feelings, but I still do care. There are 20 years of memories and affection. Every day something reminds me of her. Sometimes I wake up and think I'm at home and expect to feel her next to me. Then I remember. I looked out at the ocean, thinking of her home far away. What you mean to me is that you've made me believe life could be worth living again, that I'm not the total loser I thought I was before I met you. She affected my life deeply. You've made me question everything I've believed and think about whether I'm really the good person I thought I was. I turned my gaze back to the ocean and saw the shadows of rocks as the water pulled back. To change the topic, I pointed to the rocks and said, "They call this the Matanzas Inlet. Matanzas has a strong history. This place was once significant in history. There's a monument in a park not far from here. I've known about it since I grew up nearby, and my friends and I used to come here or to St. Augustine in the summers. In 1565, the Spanish and French were not friendly, and both wanted this land. The Spanish took action against 250 French Huguenots to claim it. They even built a fort similar to the one in St. Augustine back in the 1700s. That fort is gone, but your people were here a long time ago." I watched the rocks in the moonlight and said, When I was a kid, we liked to swim out to those rocks when the tide was high. It's risky. You can get hurt on some of them, and some kids have had accidents in the waves, but usually their friends help them out. I took her hand and guided her fingers gently along my jaw. She felt a scar and looked at me with curiosity. I was 15 when we came here one July day. They always had no swimming signs up, even though the county didn't pay for lifeguards. The waves were rough. I went in, and while we were having fun, a wave knocked me against a rock. I got a cut on my chin. It was lucky there were no sharks around because I was hurt. It wasn't a big injury, it only needed 5 stitches, but it bled a lot. Kids can be reckless, though. I was out there again the next weekend. Aline moved closer and gently touched her lips to my jaw. Do you realize this is the first time we've ever talked about your past, your childhood? We didn't talk much on the bonne chance, Aline, if you remember. I know about you and her, just a summary. But you have a whole life, a childhood, a marriage. I don't know anything about that. She has all those memories with you. I'm just someone you shared a week with on a cruise. She turned away, her body shaking a bit. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. And you have a life I don't know about. You are much more than a brief encounter. Do you care about me, even a little, Bill? Do you care for me as much as you care for her? When I didn't answer, she gave me a sad smile. That feels unkind, Bill. I get that, but I feel vulnerable and scared. On the bonne chance I had you in my life, now I'm in hers. I want to win. I want you to choose me. I pulled her forward and kissed her softly one more time, then said, You wouldn't know what to do with me if you won, Aline. Would you leave Philippe for me? Don't answer that. I already know. What's the point of fighting for something you can't win? Wednesday, August 31st, 2005, 5 p.m. Teller held the upset young woman close, comforting her as she dealt with her feelings. Even though she was sobbing and struggling to breathe, he had helped her feel a little better after their session. He didn't want to leave any mess for the cleaning team, like what happened after his first session with another client. Luckily, he had managed to handle the situation well. As she leaned against him, he felt a wave of concern but kept his focus on being professional. It was important for him to stay focused and honor his role as her therapist without crossing any lines. He stroked her hair gently and spoke softly. It's all right now, Debbie. You're safe here, and you can share what you've been through. She trembled and pressed her face into his shoulder. Oh my God. To help her focus and begin to talk about the memories she had just revisited, he asked, What are you feeling, Debbie? What thoughts are coming to you right now? She took a moment before replying, I feel sick, nervous, and scared. We can work through this. It's likely been a while since these memories came back, and it's important to know they can't harm you now. They're just memories. No, I'm not scared of them. It's something more, something I can't understand. And it scares me, like in a dream when you feel something behind you, but you can't turn around. He made a mental note to explore that feeling more. It could lead to deeper, hidden memories. While feeling angry and sad can be normal in such a situation, her fear stood out. And this is confusing. I feel angry at Bill. I don't know why I feel this way. He wasn't involved. Why do I blame him? It's hard to sort through these feelings. It might help if you think about what connects him to your memories. Go on. She shifted a bit, leaning back on the couch, ready to keep thinking about it. She wiped her tears with her hand and then took a white handkerchief from Dr. Teller to clean her face. You want to know what I feel the most, Dr. Teller? Yes, I'm very curious if there is something you feel more strongly than what you've said before. Disgust. That's a normal reaction to what you're talking about. It's upsetting just to hear about, let alone experience. She looked up from the coffee table, which often caught her attention. There was a deep sadness in her smile that made it hard for him to keep his usual calm look. No, I feel disgust at myself. At yourself? Don't you see, doctor? I know you do. You're trying to be kind. I was in a public bathroom. My intentions were clear, even if things turned out differently. I didn't go there to have a deep conversation. I went for something else. You can't be sure about that. Doctor, it was a big public bathroom, likely in a restaurant or a hotel. I wasn't being forced into anything. I could have asked for help, but I didn't. I remember making choices, and I could have acted differently, but I didn't. I know what happened, doctor. I seem to have walked into it willingly. I wasn't naive. I was a grown woman with responsibilities. While my husband, whom I promised to love, was somewhere else, I chose to spend time with others. I thought I was a good wife and mother. No wonder I struggled to face what happened. Tears rolled down her cheeks without stopping. The irony is, doctor, I thought I was a better person than this. I like closeness, and I have had experiences with different partners before. But I believed I was honest when I made a promise. I thought I could keep it. I promised Bill. He accused me of being unfaithful, and I insisted he was wrong. Now it seems he was right all along. He just misunderstood the reasons behind my actions. Teller stayed quiet. Sometimes patience needed room to think. She wiped a tear away and looked at it as if seeing it for the first time. I enjoy closeness, doctor. I like attention from men. I enjoy that special feeling when someone notices me for the first time, and I sense that they might feel the same way. When I met Bill, I started to develop feelings for him while staying true to myself. He knew I found other men attractive, and I probably always would. I thought about how I might still be a flirt even when I get older. I could see that he had worries about me, but I didn't know how to change who I was. I tried hard to reassure him. No matter who else caught my eye, I always returned my affection to him. I think he appreciated that most of the time. It's nice for some people to know they are loved by someone whom others find interesting, as long as they don't feel jealous. For the first 10 years, before he started working at the state attorney's office and our marriage began to struggle, we were great. I never cheated, even though there were times I wondered what being single would feel like again. But I stayed committed. The doctor paused and said, "You don't have to promise to be honest, Debbie. You can say anything to me, and it would only affect you. I believe you have been honest during our sessions. I trust you." I felt good about myself until today, doctor. Now I feel unsure. After he took the job, everything changed. When my Aunt Clarice had her own troubles and suggested that Bill might not be faithful, I began to act in ways I later questioned. I let some men get a little too close when we danced, sometimes allowing a kiss to go on longer than I meant. There were times I acted on impulse at parties. But I never crossed certain boundaries. I never went beyond what I felt was right. My relationship with Bill meant a lot to me, even during tough times. Despite the frustrations, I believed I kept my promise to him. I thought about my feelings, but stayed true in my actions. Thinking back on the past few years, especially after Clarice passed away, I started to wonder about the future of our marriage. I tried to talk to him about my feelings, but it often led to fights. It was hard for me to share my real thoughts. I knew that talking about my doubts would only make him more insecure. He often worried about whether he could fulfill my needs, and discussing it openly could cause more problems. I tried to encourage him to take better care of himself, thinking it would help strengthen our bond. But his job always seemed to come first, and I understood that it was a big part of who he was. Still, I couldn't forget Clarice's words. She had loved her husband deeply. He was about 10 years older than Bill when one day he walked in and told her he was leaving her for a young woman in her office. It broke her heart, and it took her 3 years to fully accept it. I thought about Bill and his work, which added to my frustrations. I felt lonely and sad every day, but I couldn't tell him I was thinking about separation. I think I was scared. We had a nice home, we were doing well financially, and we had 2 young kids. It was comfortable. That word doesn't sound great, but it fits. I kept hoping he would notice what he might lose. But he never did, and then I met Doug Baker. Looking back, he could have gotten closer quickly, but he took his time. Even though I told myself he was just a friend, I realized I was heading toward a path I wasn't sure I wanted in my marriage with Bill. So, I began to think seriously about how to talk about separation, how to explain it to Bill and the kids, and how we would manage money. I could have accepted that decision. I had been loyal for as long as I could. I knew our family and friends might look down on me. They would probably feel sorry for Bill, who faced his own challenges, and I could guess he would be very affected if I left. But I would know I tried to be a good partner. She looked at Teller, her eyes now clear. And now I see that it was all misdirected. I didn't hold up my promises. I didn't respect my vows. I feel like I've gone back to behaviors I thought I had left behind. I'm not sure if I can face him again. Teller sat quietly for a few moments. I've never felt bad about my choices in life before, and now I do. Okay, Teller said finally. You've recognized your actions. What now? What do you mean? I'm not sure you fully understand what we've talked about in this session. I have some questions. But for now, let's agree that you didn't keep your marriage vows. You involved yourself with others emotionally in ways that might be seen as unfaithful. Many might think you acted against the trust in a committed relationship. So what does that mean for you? She stared at him, surprised. So what? That makes me a bad person, a liar, someone who hurt a man who cared about her. What kind of mother does that make me? How could I ever teach Kelly or BJ about right and wrong and keep a straight face? And if they ever find out? Teller leaned back, picked up his pipe, lit it, and took a deep breath of the smoke before letting it out. I understand your point, Miss Bascom, he said in a serious tone. You are a complex person. In some cultures, you might have had rituals to make up for your mistakes. We don't do that here. But there are other options and support available. I think you mentioned your husband left a gun in your home. She looked at him, her eyes wide in surprise. Dr. Teller, are you serious? Are you saying I should hurt myself because I made a mistake? He smiled gently. No. You were feeling really guilty about what you think you've learned. I just wanted to help you see things differently. Imagine you made a big mistake. You have a few ways to handle it. You could try to get rid of the guilt completely, which would change things for your family and make life harder for those you care about. Or you might go to your husband, tell him what happened, and ask for his understanding or forgiveness. From what you've told me, it seems like you don't want to be with him again, and confirming his worries might only help him move on. How does that really help you? Lastly, you could keep this to yourself. This way, your children and family won't have to bear the weight of this secret, and your husband wouldn't have to see you in a negative way. You have options, but if you decide to keep this to yourself, you will need to deal with the feelings alone and not put that weight on others. Try to be the best mother, daughter, and ex-wife you can. It won't be easy, but it can be done. He looked at her, thinking about what he wanted to say, but not speaking. You can handle a lot of guilt if you really need to. I know. Tuesday, August 30th, 2005, 5 p.m. He left her, went to his office door, and locked it. He wasn't sure why, but he wanted to have some time alone with Aline. When he came back to her, they didn't touch. They just stood there looking at each other. Why? I missed you, Bill. I tried not to. I know you didn't want to see me again, but I missed you. I thought it would get better as time passed. But it hasn't. How did you manage to get away from the bonne chance? If you had that much free time, weren't you going back to Philippe and Andre? It was time for me to leave the ship, but Philippe called. He told me he got Andre a spot in one of the best boys' clubs in France. It's a great chance for him. Many leaders in France were part of it when they were young. It's like being in a special club at Oxford or Cambridge. He'll make friendships that will last a lifetime. She looked at her hand, and I noticed she hadn't put her wedding ring back on. She seemed to be thinking about her family. Philippe came from humble beginnings. He worked hard to reach where he is now, but he always thought he could have gone further with better connections, which Andre will now have. And for 2 weeks, Andre will be on a safari in Kenya with Philippe and some other fathers. It's part of their tradition. And a mom wouldn't fit in there? She shook her head. No, it takes away time from me and Andre, but I understand. I care about them both, and I will see Andre in 2 weeks. I could have stayed on the ship or flown back to Paris. I could have visited friends and family. Instead, she moved closer and placed her hand on my chest. I chose to surprise someone I've only known for a week, someone who is trying to start over. I wasn't even sure if he would want to see me. I must be foolish. I hugged her tightly, feeling her warmth. I'm really happy you're here, Aline. Do you have any plans for the next 2 weeks? Just one, to be with you, if you'll have me. Of course. My mind started to change. I'm not sure how much time I'll have. My work schedule is pretty busy. I paused and looked at her, realizing how much it meant that she chose to be here with me. I wasn't going to miss this chance. Work could wait. I have a few things to take care of, but I'll make time for us. I want to show you around Northeast Florida where I grew up. It's not quite Paris, but there are many nice places. That sounds fun. Do you want to go out and celebrate tonight? I raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Everyone at the courthouse is talking about your big win. I saw a news report at the airport. They called you the Angel of Death taking a bite out of the shark. You've become kind of famous. I'm just a short-lived sensation, Aline. In a week, people will forget my name. I don't think so, she said, wrapping her arms around me. My friend is becoming more famous every day, and I think I'll be your first fan. We should definitely go out tonight. I thought for a moment. I know a nice place we can go for drinks after we eat, but I really want to avoid any places where we might run into reporters or people I know. She looked hurt. Are you embarrassed by me, Bill? I pulled her closer. Wherever I go with you, others will see how lucky I am. You'll be the most stunning person there. How could I be embarrassed? Then why? I want you all to myself, Aline. I don't want to share you. I want to avoid questions, especially from Debbie. And, I continued, the world is small. If someone sees me with a gorgeous woman, it could easily end up online. Does Philippe know you're spending these 2 weeks with me? She shook her head, looking down. Do you want to explain to him why you came to my town? I don't think anyone, especially Philippe, would overlook that. She looked worried. My God, Bill. I never considered. I held her shoulders gently. Don't worry. I'm happy you're here now. We can enjoy our time together if we just take care. You and I both know he sees other women, but you've never felt ashamed of him, right? He's been careful. She nodded. We just need to be cautious. As long as we don't embarrass him, he won't act out. He can't. Even in France, a mother has rights concerning her children. If he cares about you like you say, then he won't harm your marriage as long as you don't make him look bad in public. We just need to avoid making news. I'm lucky, I said, running my hand through her thick black hair. I'm not that famous yet. If I were someone like Bill Clinton or Johnny Depp, we wouldn't stand a chance. But away from the courthouse, I'm just another regular guy. She smiled at me. You will never be just another regular guy, Bill Maitland. And I might be a bit mean, but I'd love to see your wife's reaction the first time she sees us together. I smiled back at her. You are a little mean. But I'm yours, and I might just hint to your wife that someone else is making you happy. She reached out playfully, making me feel a rush of emotions. Aline had a way of captivating me. Let's think of it as an old toy that still works well. Remember? Yeah, I remember, I replied, gently moving her hand away. But I need to leave here soon, and I want to avoid drawing attention. She shrugged, a playful glint in her eye. All right, Bill. What's our clever plan? No plan. Just walk out and head to the coffee shop on the first floor. Order a coffee and wait a couple of minutes. When I get there, you'll see me and follow me to my car. She smiled brightly and said, This is exciting. I'll be the one enjoying a nice drink when you arrive. I opened the door and walked her out, making sure Susie could see me shake her hand and say, I promise you that I'll be open for an in-depth interview with your correspondent before the end of the week. If you could send a formal request through Mr. Edwards' office, my secretary will handle it. Is that okay? She gave a cool, professional smile and replied, That is very kind of you, Mr. Maitland. I look forward to working with you in the future. A playful spark lit her eyes as she winked, and I felt the urge to tease her back, but I kept my professional attitude. I nodded and walked back into my office. I was trying to finish about 20 different tasks, while my mind was elsewhere when the phone buzzed. I pressed the intercom button and Susie said, Mr. Maitland, I'm sorry, but you have some people here who need to see you. Susie, I'm really trying to leave. Who is it? One is Miss Bascom from the Public Defender's office, and the other is Miss Martinez from Mr. Edwards' office. Who? Who should I send in first? I wasn't sure. Maybe I was still dazed from the day I'd had. Maybe I just wanted to see if they could both fit through the door at the same time, but I said, Send them both in, Susie. A moment later, the door opened, and sure enough, they both came through at the same time. It was one of the few times I'd seen them together in the same room. Debbie was dressed in a professional outfit and had a strong, confident presence that was hard to ignore. She stood about 4 inches taller than Myra. Myra, with her bright hair and lively energy, entered with a spark that drew attention. I wasn't sure where to look, so I set my gaze in between them. Debbie shot Myra a quick look, and Myra responded without moving her head. Something unspoken was happening, but I couldn't figure it out. I've had a long day, Debbie, and I need to leave. Is this personal, Or does the public defender want to send me congratulations? If it's the latter, please tell Mr. August thank you. If it's the former, you didn't need to stop by. It's both. I talked to Johnny Mr. August, and he did want me to send you his congratulations. He also wanted me to pass on a special message. What is it? Her face showed a mix of emotions, and for a moment I felt curious and connected. He said, "You did a great job today, Bill. You handed Lou a significant loss, but don't expect our people to back down from you in the future. You just painted a big target on your back, and they'll be aiming for you. Good luck." I couldn't help but smile. It sounded just like Johnny. He'd probably take on a case against me just to get back at me, and while he might not be in Lou's league as a trial lawyer, that simple, folksy charm he used with juries always made it tough to win their sympathy against him. Still, it would be entertaining. "Please tell Mr. August I look forward to our next challenge," Miss Bascom said. "I just wanted to let you know that you were impressive. Lou is flashy, and I underestimated you, Bill. I wish I had seen you at work earlier. I don't know why I never did." I just stared at her. Not long ago, those words would have made me feel good. Now they only reminded me of what I had lost. "Thank you." She glanced at Myra, who was just standing there, smiling at me. Debbie looked like she wanted to say more, but shook her head and turned to leave. As always, she looked just as good walking away. Myra gave her a brief look as she walked out the door, then sat down in a chair across from me and crossed her legs. I focused on keeping a professional demeanor. "And what does the big man want to say, Miss Martinez?" "Nothing." "Then, would it surprise you, Mr. Maitland? Did you know I've dreamed about you?" I looked into her bright green eyes and thought she might be joking, but I wasn't sure. "Actually, yes. I've had those dreams too. It's like finding out Sister Teresa dreamed about me." She tried to look serious, but there was a sparkle in her eyes. "Are you saying I'm as unlikely as an old nun dreaming about you?" "No, it's just surprising to think you dream about me at all." "I'll admit, Mr. Maitland, I've always liked you. You're one of the good guys, and I think you look better than you used to." "Better? You might get a big head from that, but yes, and I always thought you might be interested in me. Like every guy from age 15 to 90? Sure." She leaned back and took a deep breath, capturing my attention. "But you've always been married. I knew you wouldn't stray from that, and I don't get involved with married men." She smiled quickly and added, "Except in certain situations. But now you're single. I thought you might be free this week for drinks or dinner." I was taken aback. "You're asking me out?" "It's the 21st century. Women can do that." I considered her invitation, and though it pained me, I said, "I'm sorry, Myra. I'll be busy for at least a couple of weeks." "Did someone come into your life that fast?" she asked, doubt in her expression. "You're not going back to—" "No. There's nothing certain about the next few weeks, but there is someone, and likely nothing will happen, but even when you're single, you're a decent guy. You could choose differently, but that's not who you are. I wish I had acted sooner." She stood up and gave me a warm hug that said so much without words. "It's okay, Bill. I didn't think I could respect you more than I do, but remember, if things don't go well with her, I'd really like to go out. Don't forget." "I won't." With that, she left my office gracefully and reminded me how much Aline had captured my thoughts. I felt good about my choice to explore something meaningful with Aline. Once she was gone, I had to return several phone calls, sign some documents, and talk with 2 colleagues before I could finish my day. As I walked toward the street leading to the private parking lot for courthouse officials, I glanced at the nearby coffee shop. The noise there was a familiar scene from the past years. Luckily, 4 years ago, they built a covered garage next to the jail overlooking the river, which made things easier. As I passed by her, I noticed her cheerful attitude, and I couldn't help but smile. I left the courthouse feeling happy. 5 minutes later, she was next to me, and we headed to Chez Alexandra, a restaurant in Avondale known for its great French food. The owner and chef had spent 20 years working in different places before starting his own restaurant 5 years ago. It wasn't Paris, but it certainly felt special. He had managed to keep the restaurant open in a city where barbecue places were more common than any other. Many people said Jacksonville felt more like South Georgia, and I had to agree when I thought about the food options. I didn't visit often because just looking at the menu could make me gain weight, but I really enjoyed the food after coming back from Paris, and I thought Aline would like a taste of home. Alexandre Auvray was about 50, tall and slim with dark hair that was starting to turn silver. Even though he ran the kitchen, he welcomed guests in a tuxedo, making it feel like a special occasion every time you walked in. I didn't think he would remember me, but he gave me a curious look when he saw the dark-haired woman beside me and said, "Mr. Maitland, it's nice to see you again. I believe you were here last with—" I nodded. "My ex-wife, the tall blonde. She's not my wife anymore. Let me introduce you to my friend, Aline Desjardins." A genuine smile appeared on his face, and he began speaking quickly in French, which made Aline smile and blush. While they talked, I remembered my last visit with Debbie. It took me 6 months to convince her to join me, and she viewed every dish as too much. I knew she was serious about keeping her weight down because she could have easily gained more. It hurt that it felt like I was making her worry. I just wanted to share some of the wonderful food I had found in Paris with someone I cared about. Those nights often finished with me wrapping up to keep warm. I shook my head to clear those memories. That was in the past. This was now, I told myself as I watched Alexandre glance at Aline with admiration. He finally looked at me, surprised by what he saw. "Mr. Maitland, I apologize. I didn't realize you had changed so much. You are quite lucky." I glanced at Aline and said, "I know." He shook his head again. "You walk in here with two of the most lovely women in this area. It's a good thing I have a wonderful wife, or I might be envious." "I've seen Cybele, Alexandre. You have nothing to worry about." "You're kind, but I assume you came to eat. Please take a seat and let me get your order." "Oh, by the way, congratulations on your win in court. For the next 2 hours, Alexander and his team, joined by the charming Cybele, served us a variety of delicious French foods, and both Aline and I enjoyed more than we probably should have. I even tried some snails, which were a special dish. Finally, as we sipped coffee and enjoyed a dessert with nuts and chocolate, I said to Alexandra, "All right, I give in. One more bite and I won't be able to move. I can't thank you enough for this amazing meal." He and Cybele joined us at the table, and the two women chatted happily. Though I couldn't catch every word, I noticed they often looked my way, with Aline blushing quite a bit. When it was time to leave at 8 p.m., Cybele pulled me aside and whispered, "I can tell there's more happening here than Aline is letting on. She can't hide her feelings for you. She mentioned your thoughtful gift. Such a sweet gesture." Then she reminded me about how important it is to show love in a relationship, saying seriously, "I remember your lovely wife, Mr. Maitland. Did you ever do anything special for her? Would you be alone now if you had shown that kind of love? Partners need reminders that they are valued, too." I felt a little uneasy and replied, "I guess not, Cybele. Other than risking my life for her and ending up in a coma, I didn't do much to show her my feelings." I didn't mention that those events happened 20 years before our marriage ended, maybe if I had, but I stopped myself. I wouldn't let someone from the outside make me feel bad about my past. You don't usually buy your partner an expensive gift after 15 or 20 years of marriage. It never crossed my mind, and I knew Debbie would have preferred something more practical. As I walked out with Aline, I made sure to keep her close and gave her a gentle touch on her back, despite Cybele's slightly disapproving look. I knew Alexander would find this amusing, and I wanted to show that I was confident in my choices. Aline was a great person, but I wasn't thinking about starting a new relationship right now. I knew Cybele couldn't fully grasp what led to the end of my marriage. She just saw a man she thought had left his wife for someone younger. I parked on Edgewood and opened the door for Aline. She looked around, curious. Places like Edgewood and the West Side in Paris can be interesting, but you usually need someone who knows the area to guide you. It's a bit worn, but not as bad as it might seem to someone visiting. I pointed to a large bar and said, "This is a community spot called O'Brien's." "It's a nice place," I said. There were cars out front. Even on a weekday, there was quite a bit of traffic, but it was much busier on the weekends. As we walked by the large window at the entrance, Aline looked around with curiosity. When we stepped inside, she noticed how big the place was, taking in the horseshoe-shaped bar and the dance floor. At the back, we saw pool tables and dartboards. "This is like a—" Here we call it a honky-tonk, I replied, smiling. There were a few people in cowboy hats, truckers and bikers, but also office workers and businessmen enjoying drinks, along with some younger women who seemed just old enough to be there. Some older couples sat at tables, sipping beers from mugs. It feels like a country cafe or what they call a pub in England. It's charming, she said, beaming. That's one way to put it, I replied, surprised but happy that she liked it. I had always enjoyed this place too. We found a table, and after a few minutes, the only waitress came by to take our orders. Aline chose white wine, and I ordered a tomato drink with celery and olives. Have you spent many evenings in a bar like this? She asked, smiling. Not really, not until after my separation. Before that, I was married, and I only came here for work or when I needed to meet people. Don't let him fool you, a deep voice said from behind me. Many times I've had to help him home from here. I turned to see O'Brien and shook my head. Don't believe him, Aline. He loves making stories up. Monsieur, she said, extending her hand to O'Brien, who shook it gently. Mademoiselle, he replied before starting to speak in French. I was surprised, wondering if maybe I was dreaming. O'Brien speaking French? After a moment, she turned to me and said, Your Mr. O'Brien is quite interesting. A fighter and a businessman. He has nice things to say about you. I just stared at O'Brien. You never fail to surprise me. How did you learn to speak French? It's rough, but you pick it up. I learned it while living in Paris. You lived in Paris? Yes, when I was a young boxer back in the early 70s. What took you to Paris? He looked at Aline for a second, and I thought I saw a twinkle in his eye. Being married, Mr. Maitland. She was my first wife. I was 25 and she was 22. I met her during a tour. I boxed all over Europe and she came to one of my matches with a friend. We left that place together that night and stayed together from then on. I remembered that O'Brien had talked about being married and divorced 4 times. Is she still around, O'Brien? Did you end things on good terms with her? She's still here. We never divorced. I stayed quiet. He didn't seem like the O'Brien I knew anymore. Lung cancer. She smoked a lot. They all did. I couldn't smoke and box at the same time. She started coughing 6 months after we got married. It took her 2 years before she passed away. After a while, she just stopped trying. She is resting next to her parents in a small area south of Paris. Aline touched his arm gently. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago. Sometimes weeks go by without me thinking about her. Have you ever gone back? He shook his head and wiped his eyes with his hand, offering a small, sad smile. No, it just wouldn't feel right without her. He seemed to snap back to the present and took a step back. I didn't mean to bring that up. Hearing your voice just reminded me. Anyway, Mr. Maitland, if you can, hold on to this one. She's special. I would if I could, O'Brien. I really would. After he left, tears fell from Aline's eyes. I wondered if she was crying for his lost wife or for us, so I took her to the dance floor. I am not much of a dancer, but I managed to spin her around for 30 minutes. There was no live music, but they played many songs that included a lot from the Cranberries. O'Brien must have liked them a lot since he played their music often. That was fine. I liked their music too. It didn't really match the country vibe, but O'Brien's place was more than just a honky-tonk. As we danced, I noticed Aline sniff. Women are emotional. She leaned closer and playfully said, Don't give me that, Bill. You were about to cry too. I was not. She smiled and touched my cheek softly, saying, Even the angel of death has feelings. He's your friend, right? Yeah, he's a good guy. A bit rough around the edges, and luck hasn't been on his side in love, but he's good. Then someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned and saw Lou smiling at me. May I cut in and dance with your lovely partner? I don't want to dance with you. I stopped dancing with Aline and said, I thought you'd be off somewhere healing. He looked at Aline with that charming smile he had, which probably helped him get through many situations, and said, I was for a bit, but it was easier to let her take care of that. Now I feel just fine. When I got a call from O'Brien saying things were getting interesting, I knew I needed to come over. Aline didn't quite understand everything, but she looked at him with curiosity when he spoke about the situation. He noticed her look and introduced himself. Lou Walters. I'm the best friend, and probably the only friend of the guy you're dancing with. About the situation? We all thought Bill had decided to take a break from dating. So when O'Brien told me he was here having fun with the most intriguing woman ever, I had to come see for myself. If the world is going to change, I need to get ready. Aline glanced at O'Brien. He said I was intriguing? Nah, he just mentioned you were remarkable and too good for Maitland. Mind if I have a dance and get to know you, mystery lady? You can have him, a voice said from behind us. And I'll take Bill off your hands before it becomes too complicated for you. I turned to see Mona looking great, and I said to Aline, these are my best friends Aileen, Lou, and Mona Walters. That shows how empty my life can be. They seem nice, Aline said, and she took Lou's hand. He spun her around but said, I'll give you a few minutes to adjust. Bill is a good guy, but he's a bit shy on the dance floor. As they danced away, Aline said loud enough for me to hear, maybe, but he has other great qualities that take a moment to notice. Lou just stared at me in disbelief. Mona stepped into my arms and we started to dance while I tried not to step on her toes. So, tell me, Bill, I can tell she's not from here with that accent, and she is beautiful. Is she a dancer? If it had been Debbie, it would have hurt, but Mona meant well. No, she's just a friend of mine. I met her a little while ago. Just a friend? A very good, close friend, I added, hoping to sound sure. She spotted the bruise on my lip and said, well, I have to say, Bill, I'm feeling better about you. Lou told me about your past situation with that former assistant state attorney, the one he calls Dimples. We were both glad you were getting some attention after Debbie, but this woman, she's special, Mona. I can't say much more, but she really is special. She's helped me a lot. Then I like her, even if I'm a bit jealous. What's up with you anyway? First, you had a connection with that well-known woman in Jacksonville until the Myra issue happened, and now you've got someone remarkable with you. You think she is extraordinary? How do you even know about her? I watch classic films, Bill. No, besides being brown-haired and slim, it's not that obvious, but she has a clear style. Anyway, you are so open about your feelings. Does she know you are just one date away from wanting more with her? I shook my head. I can't, Mona. I can't say anything else, but we really are just friends. She looked at Aline dancing gracefully with her husband, then turned back to me, her eyes wide. She's married? I noticed she wasn't wearing rings, but how did you end up with a married woman? I pulled her closer and quietly said in her ear, avoiding direct eye contact. It's a long story, Mona. Please just forget you and Lou saw us together. It's not leading anywhere. It can't. She's going to be here for a few weeks. This might be the last time I see her. I don't want anything to get in the way of our time together. She hugged me tightly. Oh, Bill, I am sorry. You really aren't having any luck with women, are you? I was lucky to meet Aline no matter what. What are you doing here? I thought you traveled around helping others. She gave me a look that was hard to read. Lou and I both have busy lives. It's getting busier. We need to plan to be in the same place to see each other. But he wanted me here to celebrate his big win in that case. He was sure he would win. She leaned in closer and whispered, Don't tell him I said this, but he's easier to talk to when he's had a setback. Sometimes he gets a bit too sure of himself. After a while, we sat at a table with the four of us, sharing drinks and getting to know each other. Talk about your luck, Lou said, maybe having enjoyed a few too many drinks. His boss pushes Bill out of his job and basically tells him to find someone, and who does he meet but the most lovely French woman in the world? He pointed lovingly at Mona and said, I can say that, dear, because we both know you have Russian roots, and there is no one better than you sitting right beside me. She lightly hit him on the cheek and replied, That's a nice compliment, but it's not needed. You've already had your share of luck tonight. Lou turned back to Aline, resting his hand gently on hers, adding, I meant being lucky in meeting a great woman, not in the... You meant what you said the first time, she replied, her look catching his until he nearly blushed. Bill got lucky, but I did too. Very lucky. You both got lucky, Mona said. I don't know you, Aline, but I know Bill. Any woman who can charm him like you have must be very special. I hope you see how good a man he is. Stop it, I said quickly, or I'll start blushing. I just got divorced. I'm just an average guy in my middle years who was lucky enough to meet a wonderful woman. You are a man who was a caring husband for 20 years and a good father until your ex-wife forgot all that. I hope any new woman you meet sees how lucky she is to be with you and doesn't bring up old problems." Another look passed between the two women, and I sensed something was being shared from Mona to Aline, although I wasn't sure what it meant. Aline nodded a little. Lou turned to me and said, "Before I drink too much, Mona and I wanted to know if you have plans for Saturday." I took a moment before shaking my head. "No. The kids asked me, and I told them I'd like to wait a couple more weeks. There's just too much going on. We can meet up in a couple of weeks if that works for you." "Saturday?" Aline asked. "Didn't Bill tell you?" Lou said. "He'll be 42 on Saturday. That's when you really start to notice things." Aline looked at me, and I felt a bit embarrassed when I said, "I was going to mention it. I'm just trying not to think about it honestly." "Why? 42 isn't old?" "If you're a tree. Turning 40 didn't bother me, but something about turning 42 does." We talked a bit more before Aline and Mona decided to go to the restroom together, as women often do. Once they were out of earshot, Lou leaned in closer and said, "Wow, Bill, she is truly beautiful. If I were in a different situation, I might be tempted. But tell me honestly, did anything happen between you two?" "You're being silly. But yes, we did spend some time together. And here I thought I should feel sorry for you. But it seems like you have quite the life, with all this attention." "I'm glad I've impressed you, Lou, but remember, you have Mona to go home to." He looked down at his empty glass and moved it around the table. "People can be complex, Bill. You know that. I don't know what it is, but it feels like this is just a stage or whatever it is. No marriage can stay exciting forever. We'll be okay." "Is there anything—" "No, I love her. She loves me. That's what truly matters." I chose to remain quiet about giving relationship advice. Aline and Mona returned, and we said our goodbyes. As Lou and Mona stood up, I said, "Please keep this to yourselves. I don't want anyone at work talking about it, and I especially don't want Debbie to hear anything." "Don't worry, my lips are sealed," Lou replied as he leaned over and gave Aline a soft kiss on the cheek, while Mona hugged me before they left. I noticed they weren't holding hands and tried to recall the last time I'd seen them apart. It was a sweet thing they always shared. I quickly thought about the idea of them being with someone else, but I pushed that idea away. When I tried to give O'Brien some money, he waved it off like always, said goodbye to Aline, and added, "See you later." When we arrived back at my apartment, we took nice, warm showers and got comfortable in my small bed. I held her close, enjoying the scent of her freshly dried hair. "Your friends are nice," she mumbled quietly, sounding sleepy. "Do they? Get along?" "As far as I know. Why do you ask?" "Nothing. Just a feeling I got. From Mona. There seems to be some sadness there. I heard they have been trying to have a baby, but it hasn't worked out. Maybe that's it." "Probably." After a little while, "Bill, do you mind if we just stay like this? It feels so nice being close to you, and I think the trip wore me out." I smiled and replied, "I get it, but we should save that for tomorrow. I promise we'll make it up then, okay?" As I drifted off to sleep, feeling her gentle breath against my face, I tried to picture what it would be like to share this closeness every night.
Hey there, boys and girls. I am the story guy. Thanks for listening. The story doesn't end here. There's more to uncover, more secrets to expose, and more crazy stuff to share on the way. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. We're just getting started.